Chair Council. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Please do take your seats. Colleagues, I'm sure that councillors are well aware of an incident that took place yesterday in the Kingsthorpe area, in which a young gentleman tragically lost his life. The police investigation of this incident is ongoing, and we must therefore be very careful not to prejudice this in any way. So if members have any information regarding the incident, I recommend they contact Northamptonshire Police directly. I'd like to offer the council's deepest condolences to the young man's family and friends, and I'll also ask that the council to observe a minute's silence, so please join me, after which I'll invite the local ward councillors to make a short statement. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Harry Barrett, I believe you would like to make a point, and I do encourage you, please, to be mindful of the current police investigation.
The last 24 hours have been quite devastating for our local community and town. I want to, with political affiliations to the side, want to pass my sincere condolences to the friends and family of the young man who's been so cruelly robbed of his life. The school, and I want to make this very clear, the school have done today and will be doing everything they can to ensure the safety and social and emotional mental health of their students and staff as they look to get students back into school as soon as possible. This has been an unprecedented time for the school and the local community, and it's such a difficult situation under the most tragic of circumstances. And I'd just like to pass on, and I'm sure everyone in this room would like to do the same as well, that violence must never win, and we must collectively bind together to ensure that things like this do not happen in the future. This is a young man, his future has been robbed from him, and it's something that collectively we've got to do better as a society, isn't it? And I just urge everyone not to speculate, and I'll echo what the chairman has said there. Please don't speculate about what's happened, and if there is any information, please pass it on to the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Sam Rumans.
Yeah, it's difficult to know what to say. It's something that's kind of shaken all of us in Kingsthorpe to the core. I think the one thing I'd just like to echo of what Harry said is that we ask residents and people in the community really not to speculate, especially on social media, about what has happened. Please let the police get on with their investigation so that they can figure out the facts, exactly what has happened, and then we as a community and also as a civic community here at West Northants can figure out what our response is to this. We don't want to be sitting here looking retrospectively at a situation like this. We wish we were in a situation where we can prevent things like this happening, but now the only option we have is to learn. So I just want to pass on my sincere condolences to the boys' family, friends and loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rimmons. Any other local councillor like to speak? Thank you, Councillor Bedsworth.
This incident happened at the Cockatoo, which is in my ward, as well as Cheryl Hall's ward as well. And it's hard to believe that in this day and age that a young person can lose his life with knife crime. It was a horrible experience for anybody to witness, but people were filming it as people were giving CPR. And that to me is absolutely outrageous. And we must remember this was a human being that died, and we shouldn't be filming people trying to resuscitate them when they're dying on the floor. If we don't learn anything from this incident, it's a sad story. We need to be working more with our youth to prevent these things happening, to give them something to do and to realise that knife crime doesn't pay, because not only has it ruined the people in that family that's lost a child, it's also affected the people who are the perpetrators. And they will, for the rest of their lives, have that on their conscience, and they will probably have to serve term of jail as well. So nobody wins in this situation. It's an awful experience for anybody to go through. My thoughts are of course, with the family. I understand the father has already lost his wife, and that's a double tragedy for that family. So please, anybody who's got any information, to talk to the police, to talk to their children and say, it's never worth carrying a knife, it's never worth doing these things, because if we don't teach our children the right way to go, then we're going to have more of these incidents, and that's what worries me the most. But my thoughts and prayers go with the children.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beardsworth. We are all anti-violence campaigners and champions of peace in our communities, and may people find better ways to express themselves. And our deepest condolences go to the family and friends of the young man who lost his life yesterday. We will be joined by Reverend Dr. Ted Hale shortly. I'd like to welcome him to the Council, but in the meantime, we'll take apologies for non-attendance at today's meeting. Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies are received from Councillors Addison, Calley, Flavel, Roberts, Sturgis Alex, Duffy, Russell, Dyball, Clubley, Bowen, Rahman, Joy, Longley, and I've been advised that Councillors Eastwood, Kilbride, Eales and Lane will be joining the meeting later.
Thank you very much. Any further apologies, please? Councillor Sharps.
Councillor McCord will be arriving late.
Sorry, can you speak up, please?
That makes a change. Councillor McCord will be arriving late.
Thank you. Any other apologies at all? No, thank you. Okay, item 2, declarations of interest from members and officers. To receive a declaration of interest where Northamptonshire Council, where West Northamptonshire Council takes seriously any breach of code of conduct, where a matter arises at a meeting in which a councillor has a disclosure of pecuniary interest, that member must declare the interest, not participate or participate further in any discussion or vote further on the matter, and must not remain in the room unless granted a special dispensation. Councillors are asked, therefore, to declare the item number in which they have an interest, the nature of the interest, and whether it is a disclosure of pecuniary interest or a non-statutory interest. If you have any interest, do please raise them now. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 22nd of February. Is it the Council's wish that I sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a true and accurate record? Thank you. Item 4, other than the announcements that we have made, today we are celebrating the month of Ramadan, and those who wish to break their fast, if they're observing Ramadan, we ask them to step out, obviously, and please feel free to do so from 6:28 p.m. We will be taking comfort break, a health break for all, approximately 2 hours into the meeting, but please feel free to stretch and keep yourselves as healthy as possible during the time that we are all seated. Item 5, public participation. There have been no requests to present petitions and address the meeting on this item. And in terms of statements, we have had requests to address the meeting. I'd like to call on Mrs. Jean Lineker, who's asked to address the Council in relation to item 7, report of the Cabinet Member for Community Safety. Mrs. Lineker, if you'd like to address the Council, you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, councillors and chair. I've come to this council to talk about the Citizens Advice Bureau. The other day, I went there to see if they were open and was told that they were opening 9 till 11:30. I have since found out that Kettering and Corby are different times. There's a lot of differentials, and I'm worried about the Northampton West people not getting the service that they deserve. What bugs me is the fact that I'm not sure how much funding they've got. I tried to get on their website. That was difficult for me to find out who the chair was or who was dealing with Northampton West. I couldn't find anybody. Then I know of someone that tried to get hold of her, I think it's a her, and couldn't get hold of her. And he's been trying for a couple of days now. I'm here to speak about the funding of Northampton West. And I'm not sure whether they've got the funding yet or whether it's in the process. I've spoken to Councillor Emma,
Roberts, Councillor Roberts.
I spoke to one of the councillors anyway, and she turned around and said that it's in the process. Well, it's the lack of solicitors they've got and the lack of volunteers. I can't get hold of it. I got hold of them once, and I asked them, the receptionist, she didn't know nothing about that, bless her. And she said to me, I'll get someone to call you. No one's called me. So I need to know from you councillors, how much funding do Northampton West get against Kettering and Corby? Kettering and Corby get £184,000. What does Northampton West get? That's all I need to say. They are different times. The times are different. The coordination of this one is 9 o'clock till 11:30. The others in Kettering and Corby are totally different. Corby is 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with the same time as the when they call for make an appointment. Now, Kettering get Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday till, I think theirs is 10 till 2. And I think the differentials are far different from West Northampton. And I don't think the people are getting their right deserts for advice, especially on benefits and God knows what else. Now, I know there's community law, but I'm talking about if they're in debt or they need a solicitor or anything. Okay?
Thank you
That's
very
all
much,
I need
Mrs.
to
Lineker.
say.
Thank you, Mrs. Lineker. If it's of help, I do know that the Citizens Advice staff are available on a Monday and a Wednesday in our one-stop shop here at the Guildhall.
Yes.
So that might be an easier way for you to connect with them or anyone else who wishes to visit them.
But the times are 9 to 11:30.
That's it. Thank you very much indeed for your point. We have also a request from Mrs. Donna Bodley, who's asked to address the Council in relation to item 7, Cabinet Member for Planning. Mrs. Bodley, you have up to 3 minutes to speak and address the Council. Thank you.
Hi everybody. I'm here to talk about the 5G and the planning that none of us, like we the people of Northampton, have had nothing said to us about putting these 5G towers up. They mess with our blood. They do a lot of things to us and none of you have put out the information and you should be. I don't understand why we haven't been told, and you're cutting down trees. For what reason? Probably to make 5G even better. You're thinking about doing the 15-minute smart cities as well, so obviously trees going more 5G to track and trace us all. And we don't appreciate that. We haven't consented, yeah? You know, this Northamptonshire belongs to all of us. All of you and us, yeah? When you leave this place, you are the same as us when you go home at night, yeah? You're not nothing else. No one is above the law. Yeah, we're all equal. And that's how it should be. Don't matter about fancy cars, about the education system. Yeah, we really do need to start sorting things out and having more consent from we the people, because you were employed by us. And it should be running through we the people. Yeah, otherwise there will be a new party. And we will, just sort this one out. Because 5G putting around, that is everywhere. Wherever you turn, wherever you look, it's everywhere. And they're not safe for us. They're right next to the kids' schools, especially Northampton College, and my daughter attends there. Now, if she ends up with cancer, yeah, and she's only 16, I will definitely be running for the people that have put this 5G up without even consenting, any of us of Northampton. Because we don't. It's nice to have this meeting, but I didn't even see this for us to be able to speak. And I'm aware that quite a lot of other people didn't even know about this meeting. So it needs to be more availability, more transparency within this council. That's all of you, North, whatever you are, you work for we the people, yeah? And that's my 3 minutes up, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bodley. Just to advise you that all planning applications have to be completed.
Sorry?
Just, have you finished speaking, Mrs. Bodley? You had 50 seconds left if you'd like to use them.
What did you want me to ask?
Why haven't there been any criminal damage charges brought against
Why has there not been any criminal charges brought against the people cutting down the trees, is who my colleague would like to...
Mrs. Bodley,
Yes?
if it helps, just to clarify the point about 5G, the council does not put up 5G masts. Those are through a planning application by telecoms providers.
Yes,
And
but
they're
I
all
have
available.
appealed it online to the council, and I have had replies from the council, Charnwood Avenue, Lindsay Avenue. I wrote to West Northamptonshire Council for the planning. So it is on your list, because this is another thing I found with this council. It's pillar to post with different people. You've never got the one person to speak to or a group of them. You're always shunted here, shunted there. And remember, like I said, you work for we the people. And I think at these current times that we know things have changed quite a lot with COVID. We know that a lot of things have changed and a lot of people's moods have changed.
Okay, Mrs. Bodley, if it helps you, you'd like to write to me, please. I will ensure you get an answer to your questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for expressing your views. Okay, we've had a request from Ms. Kim Fuller to address the council in relation to item 7 towards the Cabinet Member for Housing. Ms Fuller, if you'd like to address, you have 3 minutes to address the council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm asking for assistance and guidance to have my mould and damp resolved. I've lived in this property since 2006 and this is a foundation issue. My recent contact with the housing officer was in December 2022 and I still have had no resolution to it. Prior to that, Dodds came around for electric survey in 2021 and also noted the damp, cleaned up the green goo that was coming out of the sockets and it is now reoccurring, and said that it's okay and fit to use for another lifetime. I live out of bags and boxes, can't keep my food in the cupboards because it's damp. My kitchen still needs to be updated as this was left in a mess when the heating was condemned in 2010, where I was left without heating for 3.5 years from June 2010 to December 2019, and I had to supply my own heating. No one has been in the attic to look for any of the leaks and damps. I have made contact with Andrew Luer MP over the years, and his assistants responded by saying they know how to talk to in MPH, and I received no response to that. My books are stored in boxes against the main frame of the window, where it's all in one door, because it is unsafe and it's coming loose and nobody's doing it under the Decent Homes scheme. Where am I? In 2012, there was a housing officer, very nice, Mr. Rose. He tried to refer the matter to major repairs, and this was of no good. I've also got a list of contacts, and that was, one of them I made was to then Councillor Mary Markham of Decent Homes, as I used to sit on the Decent Homes panel and tenants panel, and she was interested. I told Gerald Davis then, who was also there, and just before he left, he was acting as the interim manager for just before the new CEO arrived in 2015. Councillor Mary Markham instructed him not to get involved, and Gerald Davis approached me and couldn't stop apologising. I was secretary then of Decent Homes. I approached Rafia Ashworth, and apparently Gareth Eels instructed her not to get involved. I had the interim Richard James and Ryan Small, who was working for MPH, well, it was NBC, then crossed over to MPH. A contractor came round to the house with one of those electric gadgets and tested the walls. It all came up as a red light, and I said, oh, that's proof. And he said, no, anybody, mockingly, anybody can just turn on the light on and off, just do that.
Mrs. Fulham,
Yeah.
I think you've raised some very important matters that clearly have to be looked into, and clearly also your local councillor, or one of your local councillors, has clearly been involved in this as well. It's a Northamptonshire Partnership Homes matter, but we will take this up with them and come back to you. I believe Mr. Bodstock has your details. Is that correct, Ed?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So may we come back to you rather than you giving us more details? I say the reason is because obviously no one's taken the full detail down about what you're stating, but you have already raised it. So hopefully, if you've raised all of this with MPH, there will be a complete file. I will ask for a review and ensure that this is actually tackled as a matter of priority.
Thank you very much, because it's totally ignored.
I'm very sorry it has been ignored, and it needs to be sorted out quite clearly.
Yeah, and
soon.
it really is a foundation issue. Outside the property, you look and it looks like I've put nice stones out there, but those stones are a foot deep.
Right, okay, thank you very much for raising it. It's
Thank you.
important that these matters are recorded and clearly looked into in more detail for you. We will come back to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Hanson, if you can ensure that we've got the contact details to do that. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is item 6, opposition priority business. I'd like to invite Councillor Emma Roberts to move the motion. You have 5 minutes to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In June 2019, I proposed a motion to the then Borough Council regarding holiday hunger, a motion that sought to have after-school and holiday club activities along with food provision. That motion was voted down. I was accused at the time of theatrics, which I pointed out was actually just a passion for a particular topic. But still, that comment was made. It was quite hurtful, actually. I cared about a subject, and many of the residents who'd contacted me cared about it too. I was contacted by councillors telling me they'd never heard such rubbish. It wasn't happening in their wards, because they would know if it was. Weeks and months later, though, we were starting to have real debate about the inequality that faced our residents. And yes, it was actually happening all across Northampton, and in fact, all across the now West Northamptonshire footprint. Inequality was hugely evident. Disadvantage was clear, and children and families were going hungry. Teachers were providing breakfasts at school. Subsequently, motions were acted upon and motions were passed, and WNC's Shadow Authority adopted our motion to create an anti-poverty strategy. I was incredibly delighted. There was recognition of the importance of this particular issue, and that recognition was finally taking place. The latest official figures on UK poverty released just today show that the number of people in working households is 1.5 million higher than in 2010. 1.5 million working households. Inflation on food costs is now at 18.2%. CPI and RPI are rising generally. Families are under massive pressures that we've never seen before from rising costs. These issues may have been exacerbated by the pandemic and other external factors, but we have to accept they were not caused by those things. These issues existed before, and recognition of that is key. Income, education, employment, community safety, and available social supports are all crucial to tackling poverty. And all of these things can significantly affect how long we live and our life chances. These factors affect our ability to make healthy choices, maintain safe housing, manage stress, and more. I want to commend the work of the Anti-Poverty Strategy Group and officers and all staff involved in the work that's happened so far. That work has been embraced cross-party, but we can do more. We must embed our commitment into tackling socio-economic disadvantage within all levels of decision-making in the Council. Cross-party support is sought today for tackling those inequalities further. The pandemic did highlight for us again that it's the lower income families that are disproportionately affected, and we can all agree on that. By adopting the socio-economic duty laid out in the motion into our equality commitments, every time a new policy is developed or a decision is made, we would be required to consider the impact this will have. If it results in a detrimental effect, we can review how to stop it happening or mitigate against that impact. Adopting the duty will allow us to build on existing engagement, like the Poverty Truth Commissions, but those Poverty Truth Commissions are time limited. Adopting this policy would allow us to do that, would allow us to do that long term. Crucially, this will reinforce the request I've made time and time again for all the reports to consider this duty. Voluntary adoption ensures all our decisions are sense-checked against any impact. Item 9 on the Council's agenda this evening has a community impact statement. I've noted there's an amendment proposed which slightly changes the position, but it certainly doesn't deal with what a real community impact assessment should include. It doesn't mention once the actual impacts of gambling on society and the actual poverty outcomes that occur. And it doesn't mention the word community more than twice, and one time is actually in the title. Adopting this socio-economic duty would enable us to ensure we do that with real equality. It's also really important we recognise the medium to long-term financial benefits of reducing socio-economic inequality for all. There's other benefits, transparency, cross-department working and strengthened accountability are clear. But there are lots of studies that show that there is a real medium to long-term financial benefit to a local authority that adopts this duty. As I said, I welcome all the work done so far, and this motion doesn't seek to minimise that at all. But we mustn't rest on our laurels. We can always do more, and this commitment reaffirms this council's desire to do all it can to help residents live their best lives. Studies by Just Fair in 2018 showed that even authorities who were committed to tackling poverty, which I accept we are, would benefit hugely from formally complying with the duty. It's clear governments have disregarded the duty for some time, but I hope with this motion the council will not, and I call on this council to adopt that duty this evening and reaffirm our commitment to all of our residents in tackling all inequalities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now invite Councillor Keith Holland-Delamere to second the motion. You have up to 2 minutes.
I'm happy to second the motion. I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Councillor Golby, I think you wanted to speak on this item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know what Councillor Roberts says there, but our group, we won't be supporting this motion this evening to adopt a socio-economic duty, because basically much of the work that Emma described there is being done already. And you know, members know, and those that have been a part of the anti-poverty oversight group, I think can be really proud of their input and the work that's been undertaken now for over a year. I certainly am, and it's credit to the leader, Jonathan Nunn, that, you know, when we created our new administration, Jonathan said, I want you to work on this right from the get-go, and it's something that, as I've got to learn more about the work, I'm very proud of what we're achieving together. And I don't think we need to over-regularise ourselves by signing up to more duties and more policies. So we won't be supporting it, but I'd also want to recognise the work that we've been doing together. That's the whole point. We've been working as a group of members, we've been working with the voluntary sector, with other agencies, and we've achieved a huge amount. There's over 100 actions that the anti-poverty group have amassed and have worked on together, from advice and guidance through to, you know, how we monitor the hardship fund, how all the household support funds, the warm welcoming spaces. And we had a meeting last week and I was astounded. And yes, it is because there is a need out there, but the figures around the warm welcoming spaces, there were 14,000 visits in January of this year, 17,000 in February. So I think that scheme has been incredibly successful. And one of the things we are going to be doing is looking at how we can adopt it to meet people's needs in summer, and then capture all the data and overlay it in the work that we're doing with the local area partnerships. So whilst I recognise the point Emma is making there, I think as a council we're being extremely conscientious in the work that we've been doing. We have been for over a year now, and I don't really see the need to try and adopt any further levels of regulation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Councillor Wendy Randall, you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Here we are again. A good motion from our side being rejected from across the floor. For why? Why would you not want to improve on what you've already got? I just do not understand your thinking at all. Let's go back to what you've recently done with increasing car park charges. You know, you've now got people, you've now put people under financial pressure that even coming to work has caused them so much stress. Do you know what? Words sometimes completely fail me. I mean, what we should be doing is every policy that when we're looking at policies, we should be looking at the whole impact that we're having across our communities. And, you know, this would have just embedded that. Councillor Roberts has just quoted the gambling policy. So clearly, you're not understanding what she's saying. You're just really not understanding it at all. And I am, yet again, so disappointed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sally Bedsworth.
Thank you, Chair. My group will be supporting the motion because I think anything that will go towards helping anybody in difficulties in life has got to be a plus for this council. It's not a huge thing we're asking. It's something that we do assessments anyway, and it just makes it better for people that are struggling at this time. I can understand to a certain degree why the administration doesn't want to adopt it, because it might need a bit of extra work. But a bit of extra work to recognise what's going on, especially now we're starting the LAPs, the local area partnerships. There's such a lot of good work we can do with that, but then we have to transfer that back to what decisions we make in the council. And those decisions affect the people. So anything we can add to that would be a benefit. So we will support this, and I hope it wouldn't cost an awful lot of extra money. I don't think it would. It would just mean a little bit more thought at the end of a report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Rosie Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really just going to echo what my colleague Councillor Sally Bearsworth has said. And I also completely agree with Councillor Roberts that we can do more and we should do more to put the ambitions of the anti-poverty strategy into action. A lot of good work has been done as regards warm spaces and the 14,000 visits. That indicates such a high need, and also the incredible work that the volunteers do in organising those. But going back to implementing the socio-economic duty, which can only be a good thing, let's not forget that the UK is one of the most economically and socially unequal countries in the developed world, and we're all part of that, and any measure that can reduce that and equalise our communities has got to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I find it really hard to listen to somebody saying we're already doing it and then saying you're going to vote against it. That doesn't make any kind of logical sense to me at all. So the thing that's really bothering me is we keep saying from my group, we need to judge everything that we do in the council in terms of how it impacts, not just on our residents, but on other services. So decisions made over here sometimes have a very negative impact over there. This is a mechanism for checking that we are doing that, and I think it's really, really important. One of the things that we've been missing from WNC is properly published equalities impact assessments. Now, I'm told that they're always done, but they're not published. I don't see them. We have instead a community impact statement, which really doesn't tell us anything at all. We know that different demographics are differently impacted by measures that we take. And we need to understand that, and we need to have more information about it so that we can see the pattern of it. But what shocks me more than any of that is the acceptance in this chamber that people are poor and getting poorer, and that our job is to ameliorate that. That's wrong. That's wrong. Our job is to stop it happening. Our job is to stop it happening. And how are we going to do that without paying attention to equalities impacts and the duty to do that?
Thank you. Councillor Sue Sharps.
Chair. I will be supporting this. I'm supporting it because it's a good idea. I understand completely why Councillor Golby isn't supporting it and why your party isn't supporting it. But I will say this. Previously, a good idea was brought forward, and then we had the worst time. The Councillor has clearly shown us how, having had this in place, we would have known more and we would have been able to react quickly. I believe this is going to be a situation where we can't call ourselves a proactive council. I do believe that the LAPS will have a long-lasting and integral change to the way we do things, but that short term, because we've still got to work out how we utilise them for our people, whether they be young or old. So I think this is a shame that somebody hasn't made an amendment to this. We're often asked, you bring something forward, we'll make an amendment and it will go forward. This is a missed opportunity in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Zoe Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think for me the huge concern is that we don't want to hold ourselves to account as a council. In no other job within the professional sector could you say we don't want more regulation, we don't want to be held to account, and the only reason to avoid further regulation is because you fear you won't be able to live up to it, and that's a shocking thing to take on as a council. As Councillor Stone mentioned earlier, report after report comes before us in which equalities are not considered at all, intersectionality isn't considered at all. We see no evidence whatsoever that people have considered how different policies might affect younger people, older people, people of colour, LGBT, members of the community. There's no evidence put into that at all. Even when actually policies are going to support equalities, that's not acknowledged and considered. And if you don't see it there in print, there's no evidence that it's actually being considered. There's no opportunity to celebrate what we do well by holding ourselves to account and acknowledging it. And there's no opportunity to challenge ourselves to do better. The reason to bring in more regulation is to be proud of what we do, to make sure that we hold ourselves to account and to challenge ourselves to do better. And the only reason to deny it is because you suspect it's not something that you can or wish to achieve as a council. And I think that's really disappointing, unambitious, and ultimately lets people in West Northamptonshire down.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Rumans.
Thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one because I think the kind of principle behind it and the ideas behind it, I think the Conservative group supports. The wrestle that we've done with this is not the principle, it's more in terms of actually implementing policy and trying to create the best and most effective policy. The decisions come to because we don't think adopting the socio-economic policy will achieve that. Now, if in time we are wrong, happily, I would put my hands up and say that I was wrong on it if we're not able to create effective policy. But the view of myself, for example, is that we don't want to over-regulate every activity that the council does all the time, because then there is a chance that we will have less effective policies on certain things. So sometimes you have to have a policy that's really effective on something, but it doesn't necessarily tackle other things. But in the grand scheme of things, it gets you close to where you need to be as an authority in delivering for your residents, and that is all residents of all creeds, colours, shapes, sizes, and so forth. So, yeah, I agree with the sentiment, agree with the principle. It's just a practicality of it. I just don't think it would work, is my principle. If we're wrong, I'll put my hands up and say that we're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity of speaking. I wasn't going to speak on this particular item, but I feel Devar Zoo here, whatever it's called, is I've been here so many times with this administration to see how many times people from the opposition, councillors from the opposition, put forward motions. And the Conservative group seemed to take great strides in rejecting all these motions and opposition priority business. It surprises me that we are one of the richest countries in the world. Great Britain is one of the richest countries in the world. And yet, I had a phone call today from one of the food banks in my area asking if I could help to give them money because they can't get enough food to feed the people that need it. And the poverty in this country is getting worse and worse and worse. And yet, it seems to me that we as a council don't seem to be doing enough to help these poor souls out there that are actually hungry and struggling for their electric prices. And it's also, I think, the administration have got to take it on board. Why do you keep on voting against all these motions and opposite pride that have got a good interest? People don't put these motions through the council for nothing. It takes time to produce a motion, and yet time after time after time.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Murphy. Your time is up.
Yeah, after 17 years of being a councillor, I think I've only seen 2 instances of people.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Holland-Delamere, you reserved your right to speak. Would you like to speak on this item?
As a group, we're hugely disappointed because we recognise the progress that has been made, but it's not across the board. You've got inconsistencies within your policy. You've got bits of it that are working for our communities to thrive, but then you've got different parts of the organisation that are working against or making decisions that actually work against the ability of our communities to thrive. Embedding this policy is about embedding a culture and understanding of the ways in which we need to go. We've got the Thrive vision for our authority, but we know that we have to have all parts of our organisation working across the board and not in silos. This policy would have helped to shape officers' minds and reinforce the need for us to make decisions that don't just adversely affect our constituents, but also really improve the ability of our communities to punch above their weight, to move forward and progress. But at the moment, sometimes some of the decisions that we're making just undermine this. We're not walking the walk. We're doing the talk, but we're not walking the walk. We need to make sure that as an organisation, what we say we're going to do, we actually do, that we've actually thought about it, that we've thought about the effects of our policy. And at the moment, sometimes that isn't happening. One of the policies was mentioned about the parking. So rural poverty is a key problem. We've got transport problems.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holland-Delamere. Very good of you indeed. Are there any other members of the council who'd like to speak on this item at all? Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't planning on speaking on this item either. But I can't see what the issue are. We hear from the administration that they agree with this in principle or in sentiment. I agree with Councillor Sharps. Surely that means there's an opportunity to find some ground here and look to seek perhaps alternative proposals or amendments. It seems quite straightforward to me. Surely, if that is about finding something to move forward collectively for this council, for the people that we represent, then that's what we should be doing. I don't know whether it's a fear of the word duty, whether that's about fear of actually, it's not about necessarily money. From my perspective, it's simply about ensuring that when we consider reports, we regularly consider financial impact. That's top, number one. We are starting to consider climate impact. Surely this is simply about considering socio-economic and equalities impact. That's part of the process. That's about the impact on our individuals. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. I'm sure mid-ground could have been found, and I hope that this is something that we come back to sooner rather than later to try and find that mid-ground. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts, would you like to sum up, please? You have 2 minutes to debate.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so disappointed. I'm unsurprised because I expected you to say it. But what really fears me, Councillor Golby, is you stand there, you do talk the talk, but we're not prepared to walk the walk because we're not prepared to accept a duty. We're not prepared to look at a duty that is included within the Equalities Act, which Councillor Ruman says could be onerous or, too much of a burden. I don't see the Equalities Act 2010 as onerous or too much of a burden, I'm afraid. Policy can't be best or most effective, which were the words you used, if it doesn't consider inequality and the inequality that it causes. We've sat here and we grab headline numbers. There was X number of thousand people attending the warm spaces. I commend all of that work, but I fear that you've misunderstood the contents of the motion. The motion asks for us to adopt the socio-economic duty. We voluntarily adopt a duty that we should be adopting. If our government had adopted it, we would have to do it, but they haven't. So what we do is we do that voluntarily into our policy. My biggest fear, though, from this is that as part of the anti-poverty strategy and as part of all of our agreed processes, we said that all of our reports would include this review. By refusing this motion, you've taken me back a year because I was promised that that would happen, and you're clearly suggesting that as a council, you don't think it needs to. So we're not going to see that equality impact assessment, community impact assessment, socio-economic review within our council reports. And that's the biggest sadness out of this. That's the biggest mistake that's been made. You could have supported it. You could have approached me to change it if you wanted to. You didn't. You absolutely could have supported it and said, we're not going to rest on our laurels ever. We're going to do everything we can for our residents. We haven't got 2 years, so it can't be like the June 2019 motion I proposed. If we wait 2 years, people may well be in significant difficulty we can't get them out of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. I will now ask for the vote if you are in support or not. Therefore, please use your pads in front of you to indicate yes, no, or abstaining. So Hanson is just running the vote there for you now. If you're having any problems in voting, please do raise your hand. Your vote does count. Thank you very much. Okay, so the votes are in favour 23, against 44, and 4 abstentions. So the motion is lost. Opposition priority business has been lost. And before we start item 7, I'd like to welcome our Reverend Dr. Ted Hale to join the meeting. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I appreciate it's all my fault because the chairman's totally at fault here for not notifying you that we have a 5 o'clock start here.
Well, my humble apologies.
No, you have nothing to apologise for, definitely. As people and faith very important in every way possible, I know you dedicate your time to looking after people in the difficult of hours, and we've had a minute's silence earlier on, which I know we discussed earlier on today, of a horrific incident that happened in Kingsthorpe. And I think it's very important that we hear your words of encouragement of faith. So I'd like to give you the opportunity, sir.
You mean I'm going to speak after?
You are, definitely. Thank you very much for making the effort to come this evening, and my apologies for not advising in advance that we've changed the meetings to 5 o'clock.
As the chairman knows, I get asked to do some very strange things, like blessing trees. I was once asked to say a prayer for a very sick cow, and that was in France. But this week, on Tuesday, I had one of those experiences which I can only describe by the word lovely. I mean, it really was a splendid thing. I was invited to go to Billingbrook Special Needs School to answer questions from one of the classes. And the class had watched an animated version of the story of the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And then that class of special needs, about 11-year-olds, had thought through what are the questions they wanted to ask. And then when I went, they had all their questions prepared, and we watched the film again. but we stopped every so often in the film so that they could ask their question. And I mean, they're very, very good questions, actually. Some of them you might think very basic, but one of the questions was this, and this was an 11-year-old girl with special needs, remember? And she said to me, her question was, why did Mary not believe that Jesus was alive? And of course, in the story at first, Mary doesn't believe. So the question was, why didn't Mary believe? And I don't know what you'd say to that. But I said to her, well, and to the class, I said, if any of you had a really close friend and you watched them die, which Mary had done, and then somebody said to you they're alive, would you believe it? And then I said, because there was this silence, and I said to the girl, I said, try and think about it. It's mind-blowing. Now, the phrase mind-blowing, I don't know what it means to you, but it meant something to her, and she went, mind-blowing. I thought, she's got it. She's actually got that sense of mystery, that sense that there's something bigger that our minds can't fathom. And I felt really moved by the fact that this young lady had actually got what Mary eventually got. That sense of something bigger and greater. And I hope she keeps that, at least a little bit of it, that sense of mystery right through her life. Because it will change the way in which she thinks about some things and the way in which she does some things. And that's not just true for an 11-year-old girl with special needs. That's true for me and for everyone here. So in this season of Lent and Ramadan, I have composed a very brief little prayer which I would like to pray for you. May everything you do, including what you do in this meeting, be tinged with a sense that there's always more to life and death than what we might imagine or expect. And may accepting this make a real difference to the way we live and die. And may that be so for each one here. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. As Council Chaplain, thank you for your support at all times. Colleagues, item 7, Cabinet Reports. It's limited to 60 minutes, as we know. And I'll ask each Cabinet member in turn to present their report and to give any updates required. All reports have been published in the minutes of today's meeting. Councillor Jonathan Nunn, would you like to lead?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. To quickly highlight a few key points, one of the things I mentioned is sustainability, in which we're making great strides, social, economic, environmental sustainability being part of our strategy. Delighted to have been welcomed to Place Scrutiny the other evening, where we had the chance for a much greater in-depth discussion, and I'd like to thank those members there for their kind comments about the progress we're making. Most notable has been the publishing of the emissions report. We now see a clear pathway ahead to achieve our bold 2030 net zero target, which is absolutely fantastic. You'll note also we're up for an award. The Local Government Chronicle Awards are the, if you like, the trade awards in local government. We're up for an award for this, plus another 3 or 4 awards as well. Talking of awards, we have the Staff Thrive Awards. These have been very well subscribed, lots of nominations there, a great way of creating feel-good amongst our hard-working staff and recognising some of the tremendous things that go on. I mentioned in my report Civic, the coronation coming up. You'll see a little detail there, but do check out the website. There's lots going on locally and nationally. And, of course, there's an opportunity to nominate someone from your community as a coronation champion. special awards for that. Other than that, a lot going on transformation activities. You'll see 2 or 3 pages of that, including the recruitment that's going well to the legal services to bring that back in-house and achieve savings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Actually, just picking up on a couple of points there. You've indicated clearly the coronation. There are some excellent plans on our website. Please do encourage everyone to look through the website. And you also have a badge on your desks this evening, which has been produced, obviously, in the name of the coronation, so please do wear it with pride. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Brown, Adam Brown, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Some highlights and updates from my report. In addition to the report that's before members, I'm delighted to announce that West Northamptonshire Council has received an additional allocation under the SHDF, which is the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. That amounts to an extra £1.25 million, which will be used on a range of improvements to our social housing stock, primarily in Northampton, under the auspices of NPH. I draw members' attention to the successful prosecutions that have taken place via our private sector housing enforcement team, and I'm doubly delighted to be able to announce that, hot off the press, I've been informed by the head of that team that just today in the courts, 8 defendants were awarded £414,000 of fines against them for operating 14 unlicensed HMOs alongside a range of other offences. So work continues apace to bring the operators of unlicensed and illegal HMOs to account. Work also continues on arrangements for the Women's Tour in the summer. And subject to safety checks and some logistics around highways, we should be able to put on a route travelling from Northampton down to Brackley, which will also incorporate Daventry, meaning that our 3 largest towns in West Northamptonshire, alongside large swathes of our rural communities, will see the peloton pass through their communities. Also pleased to announce that the Northampton Bike Park remedial works are very near to completion now, and that those works have come in within the pre-existing contingency budget for repairs within the original budget, and the majority of costs have been picked up by the contractor for carrying out those repairs.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Fiona Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my report is fairly clear and is easy for you to read and understand what's happened in my portfolio. There's some good news about our special educational needs placements, which we're very pleased to see, but I thought tonight it was only fair and right that I gave you a detailed report on the latest fostering inspection from Ofsted. As you will be aware, Ofsted came in February and inspected Children's Trust Fostering Agency. The report was published on Tuesday, the 21st of March. The inspection found the overall experiences and progress of children and young people in Northamptonshire fostering service to be inadequate. Both leaders of the North and West issued a press statement relating to the outcome of the inspection and demonstrating their commitment to address the issues. As the lead member for Children's Services, I would like to echo their disappointment. I was very saddened by the report, as it demonstrates that the service to children and their carers is not at the standard that it should be. I'd like to apologise to children, young people, families and their foster carers that the service they have received from our fostering service has not been to the standard that we would want and not to the standard that they deserve. Both Northants Council and West Northants Council are truly committed to working with the Trust and the Department of Education to help improve the situation and to take action at pace. We have already met with the senior leaders of the Trust to review the concerns and the plan for improvement. The Trust has, since the inspection in February, already acted. They're in the process of completing the improvement plan to ensure areas which requires improvement are addressed and improved. This plan will be reviewed at the Social Care Improvement Board to ensure that progress is made. There will also be another forum where progress is considered. The Trust have given assurance that since the inspection, they have ensured that all children in their care are safe. Visits have been made by fostering to the children where concerns were raised in the report to ensure all children have been seen. Therefore, the Trust are of the view that children are safe. The development of the implementation of the plan will also include a robust quality assurance framework which will enable more line of sight and practice on improvement. The Trust, as many of you will know, and still is under statutory direction from the Department of Education, whilst WNC and NCC commission the Trust, the line of sight is more limited than if the services sat in the local authority. This means the Trust report to many different forums. As a lead member for Children's Services, I do not have the same line of sight of practice in the Trust as I would if the service was in the Council. But I work hard with the DCS and with the Trust to obtain as much assurance as possible. Due to the Trust being commissioned service, we cannot intervene operationally as the Trust has been set up as a separate entity under direction to create separation. Furthermore, the fostering service is set and inspected as an independent fostering agency referred to as an IFA, which is run and led by a registered individual and registered manager. For a line of sight, you will know that the ILAC's inspection completed at the end of the last year saw Children's Services go from inadequate to requires improvement. This demonstrates some changes and some improvements were made. Albeit this did not include fostering at the time, and the fostering inspection notes several concerns which need to be addressed. Line of sight occurs currently in many forums, but this is not included fostering. Due to it being an IFA, this has not been visible and this will be changed. Line of sight for this will form quality assurance activity. Reports from this will come to both councils for scrutiny and oversight. The Fostering Improvement Plan will go to Social Care Improvement Board for oversight and to ensure progress is made and the Trust is held accountable for the plan, and corporate parenting boards will also require the same level of oversight and assurance. We'll also be looking at the improvement plan coming to scrutiny when agreed by the Chair to ensure it is fully reviewed. The Trust, since the inspection, have already taken action to ensure children are safe. This was a priority, and they have taken action to ensure the fostering service is safe. They already have a fostering action plan, and this has been updated to reflect the concerns raised in the inspection, including addressing the 3 compliance notices issued. An urgent meeting was called on the 21st with directors and senior leaders of the Trust, where issues were explored. The improvement shared and feedback was given. A further meeting took place on the 22nd with council leaders from both councils, senior officers and the Trust to again renew the concerns and get assurance on the next steps. What will be different? In the West, we have supported the Deputy DCS, and she will sit in the council who will work with the North and the Trust around holding services and practice to account. Rebecca will attend meetings and has background knowledge to review and scrutinise and has a great deal of experience in this matter. She will be able to look at reports, performance data and action plans to ensure that in this area, which is constantly challenged and supported. We know the Trust have made a lot of improvements. The ILACs told us this, but it also told us there were variable practice. And this is a similar theme in the fostering service. And oversight and scrutiny of fostering will now be the same as the rest of the Trust. Myself and Stuart Lackenby, the DCS, will also be working with colleagues in the Trust around what assurance looks like even further, and to ensure this enables us to have an improved line of sight. I want everybody to be assured that we have been very strong on our comments to the Trust, and we have explain to them just how really disappointed we are with this, and we really do expect them to do better. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Baker. I thought the informative update from you was very important to have. Thank you. Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to just focus on one little part of my report. I'm sure you've all read it anyway. But on page 45 at the bottom, knife crime, just to draw everybody's attention to the Explore Northampton app that it's got a lot of updated information on there, but within that there's a map of all the bleed kits which are located across all of Northamptonshire. And please download the app if you haven't and take a look at that and draw the attention to anybody and everybody of that app and those bleed kits, because they can make a difference. Thank you, Chair. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Very important words there. Councillor Fiona Breeze. Sorry, Rebecca Breeze, beg your pardon, there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Further to the information in my report, I'd like to update members on the staff restructure that is well underway, or sorry, the planning which is well underway. I know this has taken a very long while, but it's important that Steph Gibert, our new Assistant Director in charge of planning, is able to organise her department to fit her vision for a successful planning department of the future. You'll see in the report that she has had discussions with Planning Advisory Service and ULEC and is receiving their support and advice. And I think in addition, members, particularly those in Daventry, will be pleased to know that the new planning software goes live on the 3rd of April. That means that for the first time, all our planners will be operating from the same software, increasing resilience and productivity across our workforce. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Larratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The North West Relief Road is moving on. I do refer in my report to mitigation schemes. I have to say these are at a very early stage. WSP are working on them as we speak, but can ward members please be assured that they will all be consulted on these going forward. Active travel, we've been having a consultation with regard to the Abington proposals, Park Avenue South, Rushmere Road, etc. We are extending the consultation and will be running 2 additional drop-in events, one at Bridgewater Primary School, hopefully, that's still to be resolved, and another one at the museum. The contract we went into to publicise the event unfortunately let us down on the delivery of the information to residents. In fact, I received a report today that one only arrived today. We're very disappointed about the government's decision with regard to HS2, particularly with regard to Euston and what that means for releasing capacity on the West Coast Main Line in order to improve services at Northampton and Long Buckby, but we will be pursuing that through EEH and others. An update on the waste collection. We've now had 41,000 subscriptions for the service going forward into 23-24, and with 20% opting for direct debit. And just finally, Chairman, I'd just like to draw attention to the wonderful activities that take place at Everton Outdoor Learning Centre and commend that service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matt Golby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure members have read my report, which I think illustrates the huge breadth and depth of the work across adult social care and public health. And I would say it sort of reinforces the point that we are actually walking the walk as well as talking the talk, going back to the points earlier. Earlier today, we had our Health and Wellbeing Board, and to me, it was one of those moments where it felt like the whole system was actually starting to pull together, themed around our Live Your Best Life strategies, the Integrated Care Partnership in Northamptonshire, and all the work we're doing as a council with our system partners and the local area partnerships. And I thank everybody that have been involved in them, and I hope Councillor Stone would see progress in the pioneer local area partnership from her perspective as a local member. We've managed to get some money into that area to deal with COPD. We've got some real focused priorities around crime and things like exclusion. So we are, I would say, walking the walk. There's a huge amount of work going on, and I really believe in the local area partnerships as a big way forward, that we can really get underneath some of the issues we talk about that we know that are there in our communities and really start and make a difference. I'd ask everybody to be patient with them, because they're not all going to run off at 100 miles an hour. In some of the more rural areas, we've got to dig a little bit deeper and get underneath some of the issues that we know are there, but the data and what the police and people tell us, it might not be quite as apparent as some of the areas and the issues that we come across in the centre of Northamptonshire. But I'm really pleased with the start that we've made with the local area partnerships. And also I'm going to mention the anti-poverty strategy again. There's an update in my report on that and the real progress we're making. So I'm really pleased that we're not just talking about things, we're actually making progress on lots of different areas. And I look forward to bringing an update on the anti-poverty strategy to Cabinet and to Council, because it's been going about a year, and we said we would bring something back and challenge ourselves and say, look, what can we do better? And I'm very open and up for doing that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dan Lister.
Chair, there's a lot happening in this directorate, so I'll take you through the highlights. Groundbreaking ceremony took place on the Market Square on the 6th of February. The Vulcan Works officially opened on the 1st of February. The procurement for a development partner on 4 Waterside has started, so that's Grade A offices, hotel and residential site there. The consultation's open for Abington Street and Fish Street. The consultation's open for the Mayfair Heritage Park as well. We've also launched the West Northamptonshire Social Enterprise Town Fund, so that's a £200,000 fund that's delivering grants of £5,000 for new social enterprises or any that want to scale up. The Spon Arcade car park is continuing to be developed, and it's on time and on budget. Multiply funding contracts have been signed and are ready for delivery for this late March, early April. The UK Share Prosperity Fund, we've received approval for that. There's 12 government-provided interventions with 5.4 million to be spent by April 2025. Still waiting for DEFRA to review our Rural England Prosperity Fund submission. The economy team have been working on the West Northants local plan. They've been ensuring that they've been actively involved in the drafting to ensure that the new plan reflects the ambition for the economy and supports growth. As a new skills improvement plan begins, we've also been working with the Chamber of Commerce, been attending many events, ensured that the document effectively bridges the gap between education, unemployment, or employment rather. And the economy team are also working with colleagues in the North Northamptonshire Council on the development of the Northamptonshire Visitor Economy Strategy. They're continuing to develop the visitor economy and working with attractions and partners to grow opportunities in this area for visitors and to increase physical footfall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Mike Hallam. I'd like to round up your area.
Thank you, Chairman. Just 3 points really to draw people's attention to within the report. Firstly, our customer service outreach programme is going from strength to strength, and you'll see within the report the list of areas where we're going to next. I think this is really, really important because one-to-one support is really crucial in difficult times. So if we can get out there into communities rather than necessarily expecting people to come to us. So, for example, we're going to the old schoolhouse in Crick, and I think it's unlikely that in normal circumstances, someone would drive all the way to Crick to the one-stop shop here in Northampton. So it's really important. There's a list there of where we're going to. We're doing some Daventry in Southbrook, Woodford Hulse, all over the patch in West Northamptonshire. Secondly, just a couple of points on IT. I know we've had some really good sessions with talking to the audit committee on IT, and we had a task and finish group on IT as well. First of all, just want to shout out to the IT guys within the team that have worked on the planning software project. Great job, guys, and we know that's going live, as Councillor Breeze said. It does take a lot of work and support at the back end, the bits that you don't see to make that all work and come together. Lastly, I just wanted to reiterate some points I've made at both the Task and Finish group and the Audit Committee, which is around cyber security. And as a result of these points, we're getting some sessions together for members to re-go through our cybersecurity policies and what we as members and as officers need to do within the council and what we need to be aware of. Because for me, the number one risk in cybersecurity, you can spend all the money in the world, and there's some corporations out there that have spent vast degrees of money on cybersecurity and still been let down, and it's when human beings are in the process. So we all have a responsibility to be careful, to not click on links when we're not sure about them, and to query things when it comes to cyber. So somebody said to me, I think it was on audit, having spent the government money that we got on cyber, specifically all on cybersecurity, are we safer now? You know, are we done, Mike? Are we there? Are we safe? Well, firstly, you can never be safe on cybersecurity. Secondly, I think hackers are always 10 steps ahead of everybody else. It's really important that we remember our priorities there. But thirdly, and most importantly, you know, we have a tragic war going on in Ukraine at the moment, and that's a very obvious theatre of war that we see on the news every night of the week. But there are other theatres in this war, unlike other wars before it, and there's a theatre that's being fought online, so cyber is more important than it's ever been before. We'll get that date of that member session circulated, and I'd like to see as many members attend as possible, because it really, really is important. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Some very valid points there. And Councillor Jonathan Nunn, where's our money man gone? Where's Councillor Longley this evening?
Richard, apologies. I'm not sure if our Assistant Cabinet Member would wish to chip in any comments.
Thank you. Most welcome if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he's gone, actually. The only thing is I'd refer to the outturn report where it's now down to 2.9 at period 10. We haven't actually gone through period 11 in detail yet, so I don't want to give any details on that until we've done it. But that's the main thing on that report, that we're down to 2.9. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. There is a full report, obviously, on page 69 of the evening's meetings agenda from Councillor Longley. So if anybody has any questions there, I'm sure we'll take them back. Okay, so this gives the opportunity now for a question to Cabinet members. If you would like to raise your hand, if you have any questions, and you have up to 2 minutes each to do so. Any questions? Councillor Hinch. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions for Councillor Brown, particularly in light of the public speaker this evening, who's a resident of the Dallington ward. Yes. What are WNC doing to attack the damp and mould in MPH properties? And the second question is, what I will say is how good the cost of living page is on the website. However, what money is still available, because money's getting tight, and is there any other forms of social housing funding that could be made available to residents? Thank you.
I'd like to answer that, Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Bearsworth, you have your microphone on. If you can just cancel that while Councillor Brown speaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Hinch for his question. So, turning firstly to the damp and mould issue, the Council has responded to recent requests from DLUC, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, regarding data relating to damp, mould and condensation in both our council-owned housing stock and private sector housing stock. The next steps are that we intend to review all of this data and new data we're gathering through stock condition surveys and modelling. This will enable us to look at the information in the round, to understand the issues across all of our housing stock, and council officers will work with NPH officers to ensure timely, robust responses to inquiries across all tenures in our area. In my experience, we already have our private sector housing enforcement team going out and visiting private sector housing where these sorts of issues are reported. I've personally spoken to the Chief Executive at MPH in the immediate aftermath of the incident in Rochdale and asked for a root and branch review of MPH's processes in this area. That's been conducted and we're digesting that at this moment. In terms of additional support available for social housing tenants, members will recall the HRA debate during the budget meeting. There is now a budget of over £900,000 for resident support. That's up by an additional £200,000 to provide a targeted hardship fund in light of the recent rent increase. And I think it's that kind of work that plays to the themes that Councillor Emma Roberts raised earlier in her motion. So I'd commend those steps to Council, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Wendy Randall.
Thank you. I've got a bit confused now we're going to do all this, but I assume I'm addressing Jonathan. I'll make it really, really quick. Just wanted to know if there's any update on the DDC building. The adult SEND group was turfed out of that building, out of their lovely room with plenty of storage and plonked inside a small room in the DDC. They've had no feedback. They don't know when they're coming out. Doors are due to close the 31st of March. Are they going to be moved back into their home by then? And the only other thing is, are the services going to be the same across the board? I had a young man contact me last week. He was in a right state about housing. I said, make an appointment and I'll come along and support you. He was told there was no face-to-face meetings. I don't need you to answer now. You can email me or something, just because I'm watching time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I may, I think that's exactly the point. I don't know how long ago any of these things happened, but frankly, presumably they've been saved up to make some sort of point at council. We probably could have sorted that a bit quicker if you'd let me know, because clearly I don't know the answer to every group that meets at the various different Daventry buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Bedsworth.
Chair, we've subjected to you a list of who wants to speak on which item to the actual, and we don't seem to be following that.
Yes, I am, Councillor Bedsworth.
Okay,
so please
so
do speak.
we can raise, don't have to raise our hands then.
Please do speak.
Thank you. I was going to speak to Jonathan now. Please, Jonathan, can we actually have a meeting with the ward councillors and maybe the police to see if we can do anything about this knife crime that's going on at the moment in Kingsthorpe, and maybe work with the school? I think we need to do something rather than just rely on other services to do what they can.
Yeah, naturally, of course, but I mean, bear in mind there's a live police investigation. This seems to have happened quite quickly during the process of the last 24 hours, so I think we need to allow that to happen. But Sally, if we can meet, and then we'll bring in David, of course, David Smith, over community safety, to see what actions we can put in place, of course. Very, very happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Purser.
Thank you, Chair. A question to Councillor Brown. Welcome the prosecutions on HMOs, and it just shows the scale of the problem that we've got there. Can I ask about housing for homeless people, and whether we're still following the old policy that NBC had, that homeless people should not be housed out of town, out of the area, that people should be housed locally, because there are huge implications for families in terms of schooling, family networks, family supports, particularly when people are in such a vulnerable situation.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we do make every effort to house people locally. There will be cases where, because of employment or because of the nature of homelessness, people have to be placed out of area. Domestic abuse is a prime example of that, where we wouldn't want to place people in close proximity to the offender or alleged offender. I think there was recent press interest in this, and if you read, I believe it was a Chronicle and Echo article, you'll see that actually the list of out-of-area placements by West Northamptonshire Council was extremely short, and in fact, I believe the longest journey or the furthest distance from West Northamptonshire of one of our placements was Corby, which is relatively close, and I believe in that case that was down to employment reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I have two questions, if I may. I was hoping Councillor Longley was here, but he's not. If I may, direct it to Councillor Nunn, if that's okay. Most people in this room may have seen the IPC synthesis report published at the beginning of the week. I won't read all of it, it's very long, but there's a specific statement that talks about all government support for the oil and gas industry needs to be urgently redirected to renewable energy. You may remember we brought a motion probably about 12 months ago now about divestment of fossil fuels. We are in a situation, as I understand it, where the pension fund have come back and recommended we don't need to divest until 2050. Would you agree that 2050 now, in the light of this latest report, seems somewhat far away? And could I request that we perhaps take another look at this and try and review this and bring it forward? 2050 doesn't even fit with our 2045 net zero pledge for West Northants. So that's my question to you. Shall I ask my second question for Councillor Breeze? Councillor Breeze, I've had reason fairly recently to use the call-in process, as has a number of my colleagues. There are some issues still around the call-in process, unfortunately. It's taken 2 weeks for me to get a resolution and an answer. That currently the system does not even generate an acknowledgement when you submit it. And as a point of clarity, the current constitution has the wrong email address in it. So it says planning and it's actually planning calling at. So there is an inconsistency. I'm aware of others that have not used the system and they've had responses within 2 hours. So it makes a mockery really of having a process if you try and follow the process and actually you don't get anywhere, but if you don't, you get the response. So I know there's lots of issues and I know there's process work going on, and I'm not taking anything away from those efforts, but it's quite frustrating when you're trying to operate on behalf of a parish to go back and respond, and it takes 2 weeks to get that response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rebecca Rees, would you like to start?
Thank you. Thank you for drawing that to my attention, and I'll take it away, and we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brown, I think there was a question to you there. Councillor Jonathan Nunn.
Thank you. Not really prepped to sort of comment specifically on that, Jonathan, but very happy to. It probably is due to be reviewed. Seems inconsistent with the other things we're doing. Happy to discuss, put it through our working group. You and I catching up tomorrow on a few related sustainability issues. Perhaps we'll get a chance to chat about it then. Very happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions to Councillor Smith, Councillor Breeze, Councillor Baker. I'm very happy to have replied by email if that makes things quicker. Councillor Smith, thank you for your report. Just assurance I'm seeking really as regards contingency hotels. As you know, my ward is accommodating around 180 male asylum seekers in a hotel near Crick. The support offered by the volunteers in the village to these individuals is truly heartening. Incredible welcome events attended by 100 asylum seekers and about as many locals, football sessions, English conversation classes, volunteering opportunities, etc. But it can't be sustained without somebody in a paid post at the hotel to liaise with the volunteers. It's a huge strain on time to deal with a hotel, which isn't management, which can leave a lot to be desired. So I'm seeking your assurance that you and officers are still seeking that paid support for this village. My question to Councillor Baker, please, and thank you for your update on what's the action being taken as regards the very disappointing Ofsted report. As regards special needs improvement, you mentioned the continuing to work with parties to further progress the SEND improvement approach. What would be useful to know also, please, is whether the apparent leaching of legal costs defending decisions to refuse help to support children with SEN, as reported in the latest Private Eye, were these refusals based on policy and money considerations or simply poor legal advice, and what proportion of these cases were refusal to assess or refusal to issue issue a plan. It was noted that there were 230 appeals and of the 179 resolved, only 7 cases had been upheld, the Council's decision had been upheld. So I think we do need commentary on that. And finally, thank you, Councillor Breeze, please. look forward to the dates of the workshops on the West Northants local plan. Hope they'll be issued in a fairly timely way rather than give us sort of 2 days' notice. And just on the case backlog, you mentioned several contractors that are helping deal with it. It would be useful to know the current, exactly how many there are.
Thank you very much, Councillor Humphreys.
Okay,
thank you. So if I can ask Councillor Baker just to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a myriad of reasons why these went to the tribunal. I will get a report that I will share with everybody as to a lot of them are because we just haven't got the right school place available. That's an overall arching issue, but there are a lot of different reasons for this happening, and we do hope that in the future we will be able to have a resolution before we get to that stage.
Councillor Breeze.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in response to Councillor Humphreys, yes, we are planning to issue dates for the workshops. The first workshop, I think Councillor McCord will be very pleased to hear, will be a look at the plans we have got and where members think that there should be a revision of those plans and policies should be strengthened. Because I know we all have issues around our various local plans and what they've achieved to date. So that was a very good idea that came from Councillor McCord, which we're pursuing. And on your other question, if I'm not quite sure of the detail of what you're asking, I've got the general gist, but if you could send me an email, I will get the answers to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith, I think there's a question for you there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Contingency hotels are just that. The contract that currently exists with the providers such as Serco, in my mind, doesn't actually cover now what's being done as is demonstrated over in Crick. I mean, we received zero funding from the Home Office, but it's a huge burden on West Northamptonshire and its residents in its voluntary sector. So I'm going to be talking to officers about making further strong representation to the Home Office, because it's simply not fair on either the residents of West Northamptonshire or the residents at the contingency hotels that their needs are not, well, they are being covered and taken care of, but each and every day that passes by, it gets to be a little more difficult. So thank you for drawing everybody's attention to that, and we will make further representation to the Home Office.
Thank you. Councillor Stone, you have a question.
Two questions, thank you. Firstly, to my absent colleague. In his report, recruitment issues are mentioned again, and looking at salary levels. We need, and that's right, we should be doing that, but recruitment isn't just about salaries, is it? So we need to know what other factors are in play when it comes to difficulties in recruiting expert officers. I'm really concerned that we are still looking at a deficit on the budget, because a lot of mitigation has been put into it this year through contingency, through reserves, through services having to prune what they're doing. So I'm really quite alarmed about that. I'm terribly disappointed that under assets, we're still saying that we're going to dispose of assets before we've done the scoping work that we have asked for in terms of what the needs might be in the labs, what the needs might be in the voluntary sector. We need to have some idea.
Councillor Stone, sorry, can I just ask you, would you like to put this into an email to Councillor Longley? That might be easier for you, and then you can express your detailed question to him.
I think it is an issue for the whole of the council, frankly, Chair. But I'd also like to go on and ask some questions from Councillor Baker. Councillor Baker, would you agree with me and my group that the Children's Trust has been set up to fail? And would you agree with us that they have been set up without the foundation of services they need to support our children? They have been set up without adequate member involvement. There's been a historic disinvestment in the early years in families and youth, which have made their job really difficult. And on top of that, they've been straddling two authorities with two completely different cultures. My question to you is, would you agree with that? We have got an 8-point proposal for remedying the situation So my other question is, would you like to meet with me and other members of my group to hear what those proposals might be? It starts with disaggregation. It continues with bringing the service back in-house. Now, we know that there are legal issues around that. But, you know, when it comes to the welfare of our children, they come first. The legal impediments are challenges that need to be dealt with. But we are pretty sure that if we don't do something like that, this decade of failure of our children is going to become 2 decades, and we can't afford for that to happen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stone. So, Councillor Baker, would you like to respond to any of that at all?
I want to just remind Councillor Stone that the Children's Trust has been set up by the Department of Education. It is still under their statutory guidance. We have no say at all in how it's set up and running. And I don't agree that bringing it back in-house would make a difference. I don't think that model proved in the past. I think that it's just turning it round is taking longer than we all expected. But actually, there's lots of embedded issues there which need to be addressed, and they are working very carefully and slowly. I agree with you, it's too slowly, and we are hoping to have a little more push in that, following on from this latest report, than we've had in the past. But we have spoken to the government on many occasions. We have a Department of Education member sitting on all the boards, and they are still in charge of what happens with the trust.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harry Barrett.
I was indicating furiously at you to answer the question on recruitment from Councillor Stone in place of Councillor Longley.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw me.
I didn't, but I'll allow you to do that. That's fine, no problem at all. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on that point, as obviously recruitment sits within my area, it does amaze me quite a bit, actually. We have in this country record employment levels, and that record employment level means that we've got an employees market. This is an employees market rather than an employers market. And it always amazes me that Labour never seem to acknowledge that. They seem to forget, and I would have thought for the Labour Party they would have seen that as a good thing. It means it's a big challenge for us, and it's a big challenge for everybody because it is an employees market out there. Councillor Stone is right in that it's not just about pay, but I think we've done an awful lot on pay and moved an awful lot. The levels of pay increase that we've looked at in the lower end, the 68 people in this authority on the lowest grade are inflation busting. So we've done what we can. Then on from there, it's really about culture and getting ourselves out there. We've been to Careers Festival at University of Northampton, at Northampton College. We're linking into other organisations that councils previously haven't linked into, and we're promoting the type of jobs that you wouldn't necessarily expect a council to promote. You wouldn't 10, 20 years ago, we've seen us advertising for cybersecurity specialists. This is the type of thing we're trying to do. So there's a whole ton of work going on recruitment, putting ourselves out there and putting ourselves ahead of the competition in what, thanks to this Conservative government, is record employment levels in this country.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Harry Barrett.
Thank you. This question is to Councillor Baker. Just one from me, really. It's why we're in the position we are in, but continually being in that position, and why are we in that position? Our QA process, I can't quite understand it, and I don't get how. I get the legal contract, I get that, I get the DFE guidance, I get that, I get that they're not part of West Northamptonshire Council, I get that. What I don't get is the QA process continually failing, and failing quite epically to pick this up. Then I'm asking another question, why you didn't know, why we didn't know. My question is why, and I spoke to the DCS yesterday and I said, oh, is it time we go outside for an external QA company? Reply was, don't think we need to. I do. Think we need to start having really honest conversations, and I get the relationship is set up that way, but going back to that old adage every time, we can't, because we've got to look at that QA process and we've got to start finding real answers to these problems, because we're a laughing stock again. So I'd really like you to answer me, what is our QA process? Why is it failing? And what are you doing about it?
Thank you. Councillor Baker, would you like to answer?
I think that probably the councillor hasn't quite grasped the situation, that we have no control over the trust ourselves. We have to make a really good working relationship. It's not just set up like that and we're not allowed. It's a legal entity. The trust has been set up by the government to operate independently from the council, as every other business in the world has done. We are able to ask them questions and we have to rely upon the answers that they give us. Following on from this, it has proved that actually, Councillor, you're on the corporate parenting board yourself, so I could ask you why you didn't know either. But we have relied on in the past. He said that to me, I'm sorry, but I'm just... In the past, we have relied upon people giving us answers when we've asked questions and us taking them at face value. I do have to say that this situation has changed that and we will not be taking them at face value in the future. And I think there is no point in going further on this, Mr. Chairman. We are bound by the government setup of the trust.
Thank you very much. We have a couple more questions that are aimed at Councillor Baker. Can we please ensure there's no repetition? If you have already had the answer, please can you give way to colleagues who would also like to ask questions of other Cabinet members. Councillor Emma Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of angry people in the room tonight, really annoyed at being asked questions. That's what we're here for. That's our job. We're supposed to do that. I have some questions for Councillor Golby. The report that you've put forward, it's always a really lovely, interesting read, so thank you very much for the detail. The report talks about commissioning and performance. One of the active providers in that report has an inadequate rating. Can you tell me how long has the provider been inadequate and how many have still not had an inspection, please? On the fair cost of care reports, it was a really interesting analysis, and one of the points throughout all of the reports was that the exercise didn't give us sufficient robustness to provide any absolute basis sufficient to inform any finalised sustainable fee rate. So the fair cost of care commissioning project that we've had to do, ordered by government for us to do, doesn't actually give us the information that it needs to give, because the providers that have responded to us are so small in number that we can't take that figure as being a robust figure to work from. So we're going to have to do a load of other work as well. So my question is, how useful has that work that has been imposed on us actually been, or has it been a further burden to an already stretched budget and one that we didn't really need? I know that many of the providers who haven't come forward are actually likely to be those who are doing really well out of the process and therefore have refused their data. So my final question to you is, there was a total of 10 care home providers who submitted their surveys. It doesn't say out of how many we asked, so if I could understand how many we actually asked. And then will our commissioning projects in the future insist on data provision so that those who are doing well can't hide away and not provide us with that information? I have a question for Councillor Breeze, but I'll pop it in writing because of time, Chair. And I have a question for Councillor Larry. The two questions, actually, sorry. In your report, you reflect on a visit to JCB, looking at particular equipment. I was concerned when I read it because I was a little bit concerned that visiting an area for an organisation, company that might actually be part of any procurement process we do, might have had an effect on our procurement process. If we've already gone out to look at their particular piece of equipment and potentially seen to favour it. I also note they're a considerable donor to the Conservative Party, so I don't know if you thought that was an appropriate item. And then we have a stretch of road outside Asda on London Road, and you'll know it very well, I know you do, opposite St Leonard's, and for months and months, well, a long, long time now, we've been reporting flooding there every time we have rainfall. I have written on 2 separate occasions, in addition to the number of calls, and I know that other ward councillors have too. Could we have a ward councillor briefing on exactly what activity we're doing in respect of that flooding area? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of questions there. Councillor Golby, would you like to answer the first, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a very detailed couple of questions there, and the first one on commissioning and performance, I'll have to get the figures back to Councillor Roberts, and I'll be happy to do that. On the fair cost of care, I know, and I know Councillor Robert knows, that that's been a very challenging piece of work to work through, and the council has had to be very careful on how it's gone about that and how it shares the information that it's found. So again, I will check those figures out and come back to you on that if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phil Larratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we did go to JCB to see a wonderful piece of equipment that they have actually developed. It's not a piece of equipment that's available elsewhere in this country, although there are different versions of it, but this is deemed to be the best on the market. We're all for improving efficiency in the way we address potholes and road surface issues. And it was a fantastic opportunity to go and look at a piece of equipment that has been developed in this country by British engineers, is manufactured in British factories by British workers. Absolutely fantastic. And, you know, well, irrespective of procurement, I think it's great that this is on the market and is available. It is a really good bit of kit. We went on to visit Stoke-on-Trent Council, who've one of these machines as well, and they actually showed it to us actually working on the street. Really fantastic bit of kit. Kia are currently looking at a business case to purchase one, and we'll be working with them on that business case. It would certainly enable us to do a lot more work on our highways much more efficiently. In my opinion, but we'll have to see what the business case says. I am, as Councillor Roberts knows, aware of the situation outside Asda, and I'm happy to facilitate any meeting to discuss that and what's happening with regard to both the surface and the flooding.
So to my email, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, you had a question there?
I replied.
Yeah, actually, it's just a response, to be honest with you, to Councillor Hallam. You know, I think if there are more people in work, it's probably by accident rather than design. And I suggest he catches up with the Panorama programme this week, which shows that we are at a state where the wages are 11,000 per person in the UK worse.
Sorry, Councillor Harris, these are questions to Cabinet members. So
I'm coming to my question.
That's really good of you indeed. Thank you. I'm just conscious of the time for you.
Sure, I'm coming to my question.
Lovely, thank you.
And now the gap in salary between Germany and the UK is now £4,000, not £500. So I just wondered what his view was on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Hallam, would you like to respond briefly there?
Yeah, certainly. My view is I keep our own house in order here at West Northants. And we've seen figures that are mind-numbing. There's people in this authority over the course of 2 years may well end up coming out of the negotiation with a 30% pay rise over the course of 2 years. It's an average of 15% each year. That's the lowest paid. We're looking after our own. Other people can speak for other people, but we're doing what we can. And I think most people in the chamber have recognised that we've put that effort in to up our employees' pay and keep it affordable.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hallam. That's good to hear that. Councillor Jamal Al-Wahabi.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question to Councillor Larratt. In my ward, we have many issues that comes into your portfolio, like fly tipping, potholes, poor lighting, traffic congestion, and unsafe cycleways. These issues makes people feel unsafe and neglect. How are you going to address all these issues and when? My residents ask where their council tax goes. How would you explain to them what value they are getting for their money? Our wardens do a great job, but there are not enough of them. Would you agree with me? We need to double the team. Potholes are getting bigger and more dangerous. Cyclists and motorists are unsafe. When will Castle residents see the benefit of the new highway contracts? Councillor Larratt, the last question I'll ask, do you think you are the right person for the portfolio? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Larratt, would you like to answer the question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the answer is yes. I understand that there's a lot of issues in many of our wards, and it's not just in Castle Ward, although Castle Ward, like all others, has its problems. Fly tipping, potholes, lighting. Lighting is all provided to an agreed standard, and we have no intention of changing that standard. We are looking at replacing street lights, existing street lights with LED lights, which would give a significant power saving, energy saving, and I think actually they do, from what I've seen, give a better light. So there may be some increase in lighting as a result of that change. Fly tipping, yeah, that's an ongoing problem everywhere. We have far too many fly tips in Northampton, and we are running an education programme. We're having various campaigns in order to address fly tipping, and my colleague is currently procuring CCTV that we can utilise at hotspots, fly tipping hotspots, in order to identify culprits with regard to fly tipping and have prosecutions. There was a very successful prosecution in Birchfield Road East with regard to fly tipping. It's an area I visit nearly every day. It used to be an absolute mess. There was a fantastic, as I say, successful prosecution, and I have to say that since that, the problems that were there haven't reoccurred. So, you know, we've got the education and we've got the enforcement, and as long as we do both, then we're going in the right direction and we're seeing successes. With regard to potholes, yes, of course, there's massive problems with potholes. Our roads have been neglected for years by the former county council in many respects, and we've got a lot of work, a lot of catching up work to do. I think somebody estimated billions of pounds that are needed across the whole country, and it's not just here, although we're not in the top 10 bad authorities. So, you know, I accept things aren't good. I accept we've got a lot of work to do. We're investing £1 million extra ourselves this year, coming year, and the government have given us £1.86 million as well. So we will be investing £2.86 million in roads this coming year. And of course, if we're successful in obtaining equipment that is more efficient and more effective, we'll be able to do a lot more with that 2.86 million than we would normally. So I think, you know, things are looking up.
Thank you very much, Councillor Larratt. That concludes the 60 minutes allowed for this item, and I'd just like to now ask for members to accept the reports from Cabinet members and the record of decisions from Cabinet meetings held in November, December 22, January, February and March 23. Have your assent? Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think you've taken into account that Fiona Baker very kindly took a lot of time to explain the inspection report to us, which has eaten away time for the opposition to put their questions and challenges. And can I just say, I think the format that you've agreed to present Cabinet reports is not sitting very well with me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stone.
We need to focus on each item.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stone, and we have given it 1 hour. I did ask Councillor Baker to give a full degree of explanation there. Councillor Longley was not here today. She has used Councillor Longley's time effectively, so therefore we have given plenty of time for questions and plenty of time for responses too. We've now completed that item. Before we start item 8, I'd like to offer everyone a comfort break for the next 15 minutes. Please feel free to have a stretch break, refill your glasses, and join us back at 7:15. Thank you. Okay, order, order. I'd like to take your seats, please. Item 8, Northampton Local Plan Part 2. I'd like to invite Councillor Rebecca Breeze to introduce a report. You have up to 5 minutes to do so. Please go ahead.
Now on. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rebecca Breeze.
So, Chairman.
Shh. Please. Councillor Rebecca Breeze.
Thank you, Chair. So, all of the substantive policy work on this plan was undertaken by the late Northampton Borough Council, and West Northants Council has overseen it during its final stages. It went to examination in November 2021 and has taken nearly 18 months to finalise for adoption. This is a dramatic example of how complex and time-consuming developing a plan can be. During its passage through our two councils, it's also illustrated to me how important it is that members engage positively in policy development and consider its potential impact on their local communities as that policy is evolving, not at the end stages. So until our new West Northamptonshire local plan reaches this point, the Northampton local plan is the final Part 2 plan sitting under the West Northampton joint strategic plan and carries the full weight of its planning policies. All the detail of the plan is in the report and its appendices, and I think members have been well versed in it over the years, so I don't intend to say any more, but I would like to recommend that Council agree the recommendations at point 3 of the report and adopt this important plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Breeze. Councillor Charlton, we'd like to second the proposal. You have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Northampton Local Plan Part 2 is a very important document. It's part of our up-to-date plan. It has taken a while to get to it, but it has been subject to very careful scrutiny, has responded to consultation and comments of the Planning Inspectorate, and I would remind members that there's no such thing as a perfect plan. And I would therefore be happy to second the motion that you should vote to adopt this document as the Northampton Local Plan Part 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members of the Council who've pre-notified would like to speak. Councillor Purser, you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I agree this is a very important document, a very welcome document, a necessary document, but a far from perfect document. I want to thank everyone who has been involved in
Councillor Rundle, that's £5 the Chairman's charities. On the basis I have 2 charities, that's £10 out of your allowances this month. Thank you very much for your very generous contribution. Warmly welcome that at the Community Fair coming up on the 31st in this room. Thank you. Do continue, Councillor Percy. You were rudely interrupted by your colleague.
Sorry.
And her phone.
There's a lot of work still to be done. I'm certainly unhappy with the contribution the planning inspector made to our local plan. I think he took out some very good local things. I think there are some major areas where we need to work on. I think we need to look at how we're going to provide social housing within our plan. I think we're going to need to look at space standards. I was amazed that our own officers recommended against us having minimum space standards at a planning application we considered this week. I think that's not acceptable. Active travel, it seems to me that we need a much more detailed account about how we're going to promote active travel within our plan. So welcome that we're moving on from some policies that I think go back to 97, but it's far from perfect. We need more ambition. We need it to relate much more closely to our corporate plan so that we're all working together. So I'm sort of giving this a 5 out of 10 at this stage, I think, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I'm so relieved we've got to this stage. And as Councillor Purser said, this isn't perfect by any manner of means, and there's a lot more that can be done. But it's taken us a long time to get here, and we have suffered as a result of our planning team not having the tools, the adequate tools to do the job that we really need them to do, which is about supporting our corporate vision. It is about place shaping. They simply haven't had the tools. So I'm really glad we've come to this point where they will have better tools. We need to improve it, so we've got another opportunity, haven't we, when we put the 3 local plans together to create the West Northants local plan. And I would really, really recommend that we improve our HIMO policy, that we look again at the need for transit sites for travellers so that we don't every year incur huge expense and time and effort moving people on when they've landed in our parks. I think we ought to have something in the local plan which says, yes, we do not want to have fast food outlets or sex entertainment outlets or gambling outlets anywhere near schools. I think we can provide the evidence for that, so the inspectors will have to accept it. And I think, you know, we need to have a much more robust way of supporting our residents when they come to us and they're talking about community amenities and community cohesion. We need to be much more robust in being able to defend those expressed needs. But in the meantime, I really welcome the plan. I know a huge amount of work has gone into it, and I can't wait for the planners to be able to use it as a tool to help us do the job that we want doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I firstly want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that goes into creating a plan like this by officers and the amount of consultation that this has been through. I have to say, unfortunately, for many, it still remains quite an impenetrable process, particularly for members of the public. So I think for future, when we come to the wider local plan, we need to really think hard about how we engage more widely to make sure we get as many views as we can. So my perspective on this, and I echo some of the comments made by fellow councillors earlier on, are the inconsistencies. And this is not an issue for officers, but we do have some challenges around national space standards, water usage standards, proximity of fast food to schools, all issues which the inspectorate have determined we don't actually need because we can't provide evidence or sufficient evidence. So I accept that it comes from the inspectorate side of things. But my comment or question is, when we move to the wider local plan, and I know that challenges being brought in, I know challenges taking place around these policies, but I really hope that we can try and drill down into those and be thinking already now, ahead of the game, around some of those issues. Perhaps how do we provide evidence or work on evidence gathering now so that we don't find ourselves in that situation if we get challenged in the future. I'm delighted that one green space in particular, which was in the very first draft version, the green space at Fraser Road is not in this current plan. I know others in this chamber may have different views, but I think that's an important space for people in that area. So my concerns really on this is it's huge progress, but my concerns are more about the future and making sure that we really get to grips with working on that wider plan, and I know work is already undertaken now. And I guess my plea is that can we please use the Planning Policy Committee to be involved in that process more widely and more fully. We seem to have less and less of those meetings, and I know that's workload related, but if we're not having those meetings to deal with particular policies, I'm sure we could be using them for working on the future policy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Councillor Bisworth.
Thank you, Chair. I'll echo a lot of what has already been said before. The 2 items I want to speak on are the flood risk and water management, particularly because we've had a severe flood here, and with global warming and climate change, we are going to have wetter seasons with deluged water, which is going to cause huge problems with flooding. And I want to make sure that it's written up in this properly, that people get their help and support, especially people who've been flooded before and can't get insurance for their homes. The second item I wanted to talk about is housing delivery. I was very anxious when they actually didn't allow for room sizes. You know, nobody wants to live in a rabbit warren. They want a decent home where they can raise their family healthily. And if you're talking about room sizes being reduced, I don't think that's going to make for a better home for people. So those are the 2 things. Affordable housing is absolutely key. We've got over 4,000 people on the waiting list, and that's on the waiting list. There's more people out there that need a home. And so we really have to make sure that we have the right mix. At the moment, it always seems to be developer-driven rather than council-driven, and I want that to change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sue Sharps.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see all of the points made throughout this policy. I will make the point of the rural bond between the areas. Scattered all the way through this, there are really good points about how we move and how we will move throughout Northampton once all of this is implemented. However, there's not a great deal when it comes to how we will move to Northampton from the rural areas. And I was even more disappointed to see, although it appears not to be necessary, that the transport statement is almost zero. It does say that a limited proposal because the assessment is not required. That's fair enough. That's what you say. That's what I'm going to take as face value. I am in love with the dedication to the heritage of Northampton that has been placed within this document. That will define this document for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Very much a case of I don't like it, but I'll have to go along with it, with this document. Looking at it through the prism of housing, some will celebrate the protections for Fraser Road, and understandably so. You know, people value green space in close proximity to their homes, but it does spell the end of a scheme that would have delivered 125 units of social housing in a part of Northampton that desperately needs it. And furthermore, the planning inspector has so constrained the use of green spaces that, or open spaces that actually he or she has effectively landlocked Northampton, meaning that in future, because the creation of substitute green spaces is so difficult, if not impossible, in future we'll have, given the limited supply of brownfield land, we're probably going to have to look at densification and building upwards. Now, I know that there are members in this room who regularly object to densified planning applications, who object to flats, who object to high-rise properties. I'd invite them just to think carefully in future about their approach to planning applications of those sorts, because we are going to have to rely on those sorts of housing developments to house those 4,000 people on the housing waiting list. Because, as I say, the planning inspector has, whether deliberately or inadvertently, chosen to landlock Northampton and severely limit our ability to meet our housing targets in the way that we would have liked to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown. Any further questions or points to be raised by any members? No, in case Councillor Breeze, I think you have the opportunity to feedback on this. You have approximately 2 minutes, according to the Constitution. I'm not sure how you'll gather that together with all the wonderful comments that have come through, but please do your very best, including the ones that telecoms providers should work together and eliminate multiple masts in their areas. But you and I have discussed that many times, so I know you have those feelings.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, just to tackle that one, we cannot prescribe the telecoms companies work together. We work within a very prescribed statute on delivering masts. There is an element of consultation, but it's only about siting and relevant planning matters. Other matters such as health impacts simply do not carry any weight and are largely disregarded. But I would absolutely agree that we do not want to have a proliferation of masts, but it is important that when we have consultation that it's timely, because there's only 56 days from the receipt of a planning application or a mast. If there's no response or our planners don't respond, it's deemed as having consent. Mm-hmm. So that is a very particular bit of legislation. But on the Northampton local plan, I think there's very little said tonight that I couldn't disagree with. I think I welcome the comments from the other side, and they are absolutely right. It's not a perfect document, and we should be looking at these documents and seeing where we can improve, particularly the evidence gathering, to achieve those policies that we all want to see, which is protection of our children, health, obesity, all the big social issues. And to Councillor Harries and his point about Planning Policy Committee, that's absolutely true, and I recognise it. And the monitoring officer and I and others have already started discussions about how we can look at the terms of reference for the Planning Policy Committee, which at the moment are quite tightly drawn, so that we can look in a more general aspect at developing policy rather than just policy that comes forward to us before coming to the Council or Cabinet. as necessary. So thank you everybody for your comments, and absolutely take them on board. I know Richard Woods is at the back, and I'd like to thank him and his team for work over a number of years in getting to this point. I think there'll be a great element of relief when they see all those hands go up. And thank you everybody for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. Now I'd like to ask all colleagues to vote for, against or abstain on this item. Please use your voting pads in front of you. Anton, if you can confirm. If you're having any difficulties in voting, please do raise your hand. Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Are you pushing the wrong button? Mr. Hanson has just indicated possibly. Okay, Mr. Hanson's coming down to see you personally. Bear with me a minute. Lovely, thank you. Okay, on that basis, we have in favour 64, no against, and 4 abstentions. Therefore, the Northampton Local Plan Part 2 has been carried and accepted this evening. Thank you. Okay, item 9, Statement of Gambling Policy. I invite Councillor Andy Kilbride to introduce a report and move the proposal. You have 5 minutes. I'm also advised that Councillor Kilbride will move an alteration to recommendations as follows, and I will just indicate these. It is recommended that work is progressed to understand the impacts of gambling informed by the local area partnership profile data and the wider detriments of health. It is recommended that the Anti-Poverty Oversight Group has consideration of the impact of gambling in its work and, where appropriate, consider lobbying government on this issue in line with the objectives of the anti-poverty strategy. Now, I'm required to seek consent of the meeting as this alteration. Do members agree and consent to this? Thank you very much indeed.
I think it probably needs to be moved, doesn't it? And
well, it will be moved, absolutely, if that is agreed as an alteration, definitely.
Okay. I was just going to mention, Chairman, unfortunately, Councillor Kilbride had said he may be late, and I think it's right to say he's not yet arrived, in which case Councillor Warren will probably propose this as the Deputy Chair of the committee.
Super. Okay, in that case, Councillor Warren, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Chair. As we are the licensing authority, we have a statutory requirement to review the Gambling Act 2005 new 3-year statement of gambling licensing principles for the period of 2023 to 2025. The draft policy at Appendix A in your papers was passed by the Licensing Committee. Therefore, I ask the Council resolves to publish the draft policy, and that it also recommends that Council does not press a no casino resolution for inclusion within the West Northamptonshire Statement of Gambling Licensing Principles Policy. It is also recommended that work is progressed to understand the impacts of gambling informed by the LAP profile data and the wider detriments of health. It is recommended that the Anti-Poverty Oversight Group has consideration of the impact of the gambling in its work and, where appropriate, consider lobbying a government on this issue in line with the objectives of the anti-poverty strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warren. Who would like to second the proposal then? Thank you, Councillor Smith. You have up to 2 minutes.
I shan't take 2 minutes, I can assure you, Chair. Happy to second this. Nothing further to say.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Members of the Council who pre-notified that they'd like to ask a question on this, I have Councillor Bob Purser.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I could assist the Council in providing a poverty impact assessment on this document. It might have helped, because we have to ask economic benefit for whom and economic cost to whom. And I'm afraid the economic benefit is not to the people, and especially poorer people in Northampton. Gambling can be a huge blight on people's lives. I've seen people's lives, families, children really destroyed. People driven to the brink of suicide because of gambling. It's a huge problem, especially since it's gone online, but we're not talking about that this evening. I can't see how a casino adds to the quality of life of our town centre. I think it actually detracts from it. I don't think it's a good image, and I'd really want us to actually vote against this proposal this evening, despite the issues of the discussion by the anti-poverty group, and I think that that is welcome. And that should be happening anyway because of the damage that gambling does. But I cannot support this proposal this evening, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Daniel Stone.
Thank you. I'm going to be voting against this because I don't think the policy is robust enough in terms of defending our communities, and certainly not robust enough in terms of defending our children. It says very clearly that a gambling policy is supposed to be protecting our children, and gambling outlets shouldn't be in areas of high crime. But if you take my ward, just as for instance, we've got at least 6, it might be 7 or 8, gambling outlets within a very tiny area in the middle of the town centre, where families go shopping, where children go shopping, where young people hang out. That seems to be completely against what we're supposed to be doing. And I know other local authority areas have a much tougher stance on where they allow gambling outlets to happen. We've got a policy, I think, which is about following the money and trying to keep money local. Most betting outlets, gambling outlets, casinos are owned by foreign interests. Their money goes out of the county, goes out of the country. There's lots of things I think that we need to consider. The biggest one for me is how we socialise our children. What we've done to our children is normalise gambling because it's so evident in our town centre. It shouldn't be there.Ose places should not be there. I totally think we should be passing the no casino rule here. And I think we need to have a much more robust defence. It's interesting to me that casinos and betting shops pop up more often in areas of huge disadvantage where our communities are very, very poor. I'm very interested in that. Why aren't they all in Toaster? Why are they all on my patch? You know, we need a much stronger defence than this. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Keith Holland-Delamere. No, thank you much indeed. Councillor Tony Bidsworth.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a few of the remarks that have already been made, but I've known people in my years as a councillor that have actually committed suicide because of gambling debts. And it is an addiction, like alcoholism. It's an addiction, and people usually on low incomes tend to go because they think they're going to make themselves rich quick. And it doesn't happen. And therefore, they lose their money, and then they're struggling. Then they end up going to loan sharks and goodness knows what else down the road to help them survive. So I really think we need to be looking at this more in depth on how it would affect people in our society. You know, as I say, it is an addiction. We should treat it as an addiction if people haven't got the control. You see them advertised on television where everybody's having a wonderful time, and at the bottom they said, you must gamble responsibly. But everybody thinks that it's going to be exciting. It's exciting if you win, but if you lose, it can be actually disastrous. So it needs to be looked at again.
Thank you, good points. Councillor Sue Sharps.
Thank you. Although there's a great deal in this, I have to agree that having gambling casinos in areas such as Northampton and other places is not ideal. What's presented to us today has a lot of measures within it. Unfortunately, a lot of it is not mandatory. That is the change that I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adam Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's important to note that the paper requires us to consider certain measures that we're required to implement by law. We're not here to debate the merits of gambling per se, or the virtues of the gambling industry, which I agree is in many ways deeply parasitic and does very little to help our communities or our town centres. Reading through the recommendations in the paper carefully, it's clear that we have a legal duty to implement a policy of this nature. It's also clear that, as outlined in 4.4, further legislation would be required in order for the council to be able to consider any application for a casino premises licence. So even without the no casinos resolution, we don't seem to be opening ourselves up to a risk of having a casino being established in Northampton. I've no affection for the gambling industry, but this council does have to meet its legal obligations under Acts of Parliament, and therefore I will, in a lukewarm fashion, vote in favour of the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. That's helpful clarification also. That's corroborated by Kath Whitehead here, Head of Legal. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor Wendy Randall.
Thank you. When we was at the DDC, we recommended, and I think it was a unanimous decision, that we passed a no casino policy, and I still agree with that, so I'll be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts.
Just, it's a point of clarity, Chair. I just want to be clear what I'm voting on, whether there's 2 points in the report for me to vote on, or whether they're rolled into one. So the first question is to publish the policy. The second question is a no casino policy. Is that 2 votes or 1 vote? 3 votes. Thank you. Kath.
Okay, just for clarity, in case anyone missed that, and for those viewers at home, Kath, if you'd like to take the microphone.
We'll be taking 3 individual votes.
Okay, thank you. Any further colleagues who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, so Councillor Breeze.
I'm hearing from behind me that there some clarity would be appreciated on the 3 votes, please.
Lovely. We will do that. Absolutely clarity. So, Mr. Hanson, if you'd like to confirm that, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as members will see from the report, there's a vote required to resolve to publish the draft policy as presented. There is a vote that the council refuses, let me just find the wording of it there, refuses to pass a no casino resolution for inclusion within the policy, for which we need a vote and a resolution. And there is a vote to agree the additional resolutions that the chairman highlighted as an alteration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanson. Okay, Councillor Warren, would you like to sum up the debate at all? I appreciate you have changed roles this evening, but if you'd like to do so.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Chair.
bear with me just a moment. Councillor Roberts, is it a point of order you're raising?
Well, now I know, now I have my clarity, I'd like to speak to the alteration. Is that possible? I don't know if it's possible or not, but...
I think it's possible, absolutely. And then Councillor Warren will now sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Given the motion that I proposed earlier and the concept that I was putting together with regards to considering our socio-economic obligations and the socio-economic inequalities, the addition to this report doesn't touch the sides at all. It doesn't look at the community impact, it doesn't look at the poverty impact, and it doesn't address that item. So I'm disappointed that it's just been thrown in as an addition to try to get an anti-poverty word in there. What I really want to say, Chair, is I hope that that isn't a sign of something that we're going to see in the future, where we just throw a couple of lines in to rectify matters. I appreciate the clarity on the voting intention. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Warren, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly sympathise and agree with the health and well-being issues around gambling and it's something that I'm sure the whole council takes in view of. Councillor Brown certainly covered all the legal requirements for this particular policy. So therefore, I ask that Council resolve to publish this policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. Hanson, would you like to take the
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take the first vote to resolve to publish the draft policy, starting that now.
Okay, please use your pads in front of you. In favour, against, or abstaining. Any difficulties? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hanson, so we're complete on that. So we have 53 in support, 6 against, and 8 abstentions. So that is now carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. The second vote.
Thank you. This is the vote on the recommendation that Chairman refuses to adopt a no casino policy.
Thank you. Please use your pads again to make a second vote. It's a different vote now. Okay, so in favour we have 47, against 11, and 10 abstentions. Thank you. And then the third vote.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the vote on the additional resolutions.
Please use your pads to vote in favour, against, or abstain. We have vote complete. 56 in favour, 5 against, and 7 abstentions. So that's carried as well. So all 3 votes have gone through. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Warren, for bringing those details through. Okay, item 10 now updates the Constitution. I'd like to invite Councillor Suresh Patel to introduce a report and move the proposal. We have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report outlines the changes to the Constitution, in particular relation to voting. The report suggests changes to the voting procedure to reflect the electronic equipment.
Sorry, Councillor Patel.
Sorry, yeah.
Could you bring the microphone closer to you, please?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right.
Thank you.
This report suggests changes to the voting procedure to reflect the electronic equipment now available for the recording votes, local area partnership. The report includes details of new local area partnership, which have been set up and now running across the West Northamptonshire, powers and duties of pension committee, changes to the scheme of delegation in relation to setting of fees and charges, changes to the scrutiny committee, the proposal to make changes to reflect the finding of the report of the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which includes an increase in number of scrutiny committees to create 4 committees in total. 1 is place, second one is corporate, third one is adolescent health, and fourth, a new one, children's. Changes to the planning committees, proposal to make changes to the planning committees to reflect the report from the Planning Advisory Service, in particular to reduce the number of local planning committee from 3 to 2. When this was considered by Democracy and Standards Committee, the recommendation was to reduce number of committees, but not to agree details until the planning advisory report was published. This enabled the calendar meeting to be set up. The meeting of the committee will take place in April to consider detailed arrangement and make a recommendation for the future council meeting. Document was circulated to add to the council agenda, which include the link to the Democracy and Standards Committee report and the relevant extract from the Planning Advisory Service report, which explains the reason for the proposed reduction in the committees. Mr. Chairman, I recommend the report to the members.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Patel. Councillor Andrew Grant, would you like to second the proposal? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to second the report, but I will reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. If any member of the council wish to comment on this item, we have pre-notification from approximately 10 members. Councillor Stone, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to have to regrettably vote against this because there are some items in it I don't agree with. You may be aware that this evening the Labour group don't have any motions coming forward. It's because the motions we put forward were disallowed by the monitoring officer. And I can't find in the Constitution where that is legitimised. And in fact, you need to know that we're making a legal challenge to that. So I'm not happy with the way the Constitution is being constructed. The two committees for planning, where has that come from? In Northampton, I go to planning committees nearly all the time to make objections on behalf of my residents. Those meetings are long, they're laborious, they're frequent. The amount of traffic, the amount of work that committee does is unbelievable. So I don't understand where this notion that there isn't enough work for 3 committees has come from. If there were to be 2 committees, my view would have been that we need a Northampton committee and then another one for the South and for Daventry maybe. That would be a better split. Splitting West Northampton to 2 seems totally illogical to me. I'm also really concerned about representation. In my view, having opposition members in our myriad differences, Lib Dems, Labour, Independents, is extraordinarily helpful on committees. We need that kind of mix to make sure that we have the right discussions, the right challenges, the right outcomes for scrutiny. To have such an unequal balance on committees, particularly on scrutiny, it seems to me to fly in the face of the job that needs to be done and flies in the face of democracy. So I would like that to be revisited. I appreciate the fact that our constitution is a working document and we are repeatedly changing it to see what works best.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stone.
I don't think these amendments are good enough.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can't vote for the report because of there's too many different things in it, and we're not taking multiple votes on the individual items, as far as I can see, unlike we did with the last report, which might have been helpful. One of the points that concern me within the report, but I have sought clarity today, so as long as that clarity is accurate, then I think we're okay. But the report talks about enacting immediately after this meeting. Well, People's Scrutiny meets on the 24th of April. If we enact the item within the report immediately this evening, then we'll have split that scrutiny committee into 2. And I'm not sure we're going to find 2 dates for that committee to meet within the next month. So I understand they won't meet before the AGM, or it won't happen until the AGM, but the report says it will be enacted immediately after this meeting, as far as I can read. As far as planning is concerned, we're yet to see any full details with regards to that. But administratively, I can't see how this makes things any better. I struggle to see how this gives Northampton residents better involvement in the planning process. And I've been personally called in around 5 applications, last month. I'm not sure how the committee's not busy. As Councillor Stone says, it's always a long run. I'm really worried that this position that we've got is that there's not enough business or to be done at those committees is just another result of a forced unitary authority on the residents of Northampton. As far as the scrutiny committees are concerned too, I'm concerned about the contents of the scrutiny committee's portfolio, so to speak. Housing is obviously appears on the children's scrutiny committee. To suggest adults don't live in houses, it feels a little bit odd. I'm not saying, and I know we're not going to, but how do you distinguish that? When we talked about it in our scrutiny committee group, we talked about having an umbrella committee with potentially having subgroups discussing the different projects within it, not splitting it out into 2 because there is such significant crossover. I'm not sure that this works at all to deliver us better scrutiny, and I hope that the triangulation, if I've got that right, scrutiny group that's being created, or the coordinating scrutiny group, is able to really heavily identify the project work that takes place for those scrutiny committees, and where there is cross scrutiny work required, that does take place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, can you just clarify the point that you indicated there that something had to be enacted? I'm just draw the exact page number.
Chairman, it's
Whitehead
page
as well.
440,
In the-
point 3.1.
Thank you, Councillor McCord.
Yeah, I didn't need you to speak for me, but cheers, thanks for
we've
that.
got-
I've got it open.
Councillor
Just
Roberts,
scroll down.
bear with me a moment. Councillor Roberts.
So I think the report is quite clear. It says, for example, in recommendation 8A, that the matters in paragraph 5.2 and 5.8 will come into effect immediately. But in relation to the changes to the committees, it says very clearly, note that the changes set out in recommendations B will come into effect immediately before the Council's annual meeting on the 18th of May 2023, under C.
Lovely. Thank you for that helpful clarification. Are you happy with that, Councillor Roberts?
I've got the clarity today, so
Thank you. Okay, that's
I don't
good.
think you needed to address it, but
Lovely.
okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor Bambridge. Dermot.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very disappointed at the lack of consultation on this. I'm a member of the Southern Area Planning Committee and also chair of the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And the first we got to know of this was when it appeared in the stack of papers. It seems that behind these changes, from the planning point of view, has been a lack of applications for consideration. However, at last the number of planning officers is increasing and the backlog seems to be shrinking, fortunately. And then, of course, we're then getting more and more cases to hear at our meetings. And currently we're getting full agendas, and I can see that continuing to be the case. With our meetings, the number of site visits are increasing, quite considerably. I would suggest that if the two committee thing does go ahead, which I hope it doesn't, that there is representation on them of members covering the wards, or at least the areas that are relevant to the meetings. If you don't know the area, I don't think you can give as much better judgment. And likewise, if there are two, I think the suggestion that Northampton has one and there's a rural one is quite a sensible one. I'm also chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we have trouble getting quorum just about, and the reduction of 11 people could be a problem, particularly as we've got a number who don't come up and give their things, and also working with two working groups at any given time, we could have a problem in that respect. So I think we should stick with the 6 meetings. We've got more than enough work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bambridge. Councillor Rosie Humphreys.
Chair, yes, I wish to comment on changing the planning committee structure. I'm truly uncomfortable with voting on the planning changes without sight of the Planning Advisory Service report, even if it is only in draft form and not yet complete. I've been in correspondence with Kath Whitehead as regards the legality of relying on the recommendation of this report, but she's assured me that it is legal. It seems to me far more that it's a matter of administrative convenience to enable the calendar of meetings to be drawn up for the annual meeting. I'm sure, and as has been already reflected in members' comments, I'm not the only one who would want to be properly informed by reading the report about the reasons behind needing to improve the culture and practice of the planning committees and exactly what risks to the council are going to be reduced. Just on what I think I've understood rightly, if no planning committees go, if this is voted through, is going to be set up before the annual meeting, which is on the 18th of May. I'm assuming that means that the first meeting will be after that date, and that'll give little time, I would have thought, to organise the first one, causing further delay. Anyway, but my main point is I just can't agree with not seeing the Planning Advisory Service report before making an informed choice on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I think most has been said, and I would echo those comments. That some of the items on this report are very pragmatic. The electronic voting equipment issue, lapse, and so on. Don't particularly have any issues with those, but we do have a lump of 6 or so items together that are very different in their nature, and therefore I feel very uncomfortable voting for those, even though some of those points I don't have issue with. I also would prefer to have seen the full PAS report, and although this is a pragmatic decision about changing the nature of our planning committees, I'm not entirely clear what the motive behind it is either, and I hear some comments about workload, and workload might improve as we get more officers on board and we improve the planning processes. So there's a lot of unknowns from my point of view. So I think on that basis, my group, I think, will be voting against this in its current format. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Bedsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I echo a lot of what's been said already, but I will say I totally agree with Councillor Dermot, about the fact of only having 11 people on the committee, because you only need 2 people on holiday and another person sick, and you're hardly getting to core it. Plus, you're not getting the full measure of people who can be on task and finish groups, which are very important and actually do a lot of the work that scrutiny does. So I think 11 members is too little. I was substituting for Councillor Harris at the last meeting, and we did say we couldn't make a decision unless we saw the reports. How can you make a decision when you haven't got all the evidence in front of you? To me, it just doesn't make sense. So can we defer this item, because I really feel as though it needs to be looked at in depth, rather than just push it through because you've got the votes on your side, because I think primarily there's things in here that a lot of people aren't happy with, and I think it needs further discussion, and it should go back to the committee to be decided on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Sharps.
I agree that we should defer this piece of work and bring it back, primarily because I also agree with Councillor Bambridge. I also sit on that particular planning committee, as I am also a member of People's Scrutiny. And if it wasn't for the diligence of the councillors that turn up, nothing would happen, as that is for all of the councillors here. But reducing the numbers makes no sense. Everyone here has a part to play. We need to play that. And you reduce the numbers, you reduce the opportunity to do that, and it will frustrate our officers, and it will frustrate us, and we won't be able to bring anything forward. We have come so far, and then we are just going to put a great big stop on it. And we need to really look at this, although I agree there's some great bits in there, you know, voting, very sensible. However, we really do need to bring this back and then have the opportunity to vote on the individual points. That would be a fair and democratic way forward, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Bignell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to speak on the reduction of 3 area planning committees to 2. For the last 2 years, we've had 3 committees based on the former Daventry, Towcester and Northampton borough areas. This is very much a silo approach, and we need to get away from this method and integrate if we're ever going to transform into one council. With the formation of 2 committees, this will integrate both urban and rural areas. This will strengthen the ability of the 2 new committees and broaden their input and delivery. I think this is much a positive move and will also help the planning department on its transformation journey. The much talked about PAS report will be available at the end of the month, evidencing the fact that the workload is not sufficient to support 3 committees and should be reduced with a resulting cost saving. So I give my full support and commend this move of 3 area committees to 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown. Adam Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Important to bear in mind that the changes within this report are born out of 2 peer reviews. Firstly, from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which recommended an increase in the number of scrutiny committees. And secondly, of course, the PAS report, the relevant sections of which are referenced in the papers today and which the monitoring officer signposted members to in an email earlier this week. The creation of one committee on overview and scrutiny further supports the reduction in the number of planning committees, in addition to the points that Councillor Bignell has just made extremely well. There has been continuously a gross imbalance in the workload between the Northampton Committee and the two rural committees. When we look at scrutiny, I don't think there's any implication that adults don't live in houses, or only children live in houses, or whatever Councillor Roberts intended to say. It's merely a case that we want to balance out the workloads of those scrutiny committees, and if it proves that there's an imbalance further down the line, then we can reconsider the workloads. Place may have been a natural place for housing to go, but it already has an extremely high workload, and with the duties of adult care and health scrutiny committees looking at adult social services, as well as the work of our NHS partners, that committee is also going to be extremely busy, which isn't to say that children's won't be, but we felt that that was the optimum place for the time being. Councillor Beardsworth mentioned the task and finish group numbers and quoracy and issues around that. I mean, task and finish groups can be comprised of any member of the council. They don't just have to be drawn from the membership of that specific overview and scrutiny committee. And speaking of places on scrutiny, I'm not sure if my ears deceive me, but I thought I heard Councillor Stone ask for more opposition places on scrutiny. Well, we have political balance to determine the number of places on scrutiny committees and all of our committees, and I'm sure that will change one way or the other after the next election, but until then we have our calculations to comply with.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Zoe Smith.
Chair, I think, like a lot of people have said, there's a real concern that we're being asked to vote on something that's incomplete before us. So we're being asked, particularly in terms of the planning committees, to confirm 2 planning committees with absolutely no details of what that would look like. And I fear that that would leave us bound to look at being forced to vote in favour next time of recommendations put forward with the detail, simply because we've confirmed the 2 planning committees. There were really good arguments made when the Constitution was first set up as to why people deserved to be represented by people who understood something of their local area. The role of a planning committee is to add something additional to what's put in from officers and from planning officers. And that's something that's really important. Our local people who we're involved with in my ward really need to know that people know the areas they're talking about, particularly with the lack of site visits owing to the council's resources. It's difficult for people to really understand the nature of the areas they're representing without that being in place. So I think there's a real concern that voters will feel and that they're represented by people they didn't vote for. I certainly will be voting against this because of the lack of detail. We're being asked to vote on something that isn't complete, and that's a real concern.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. I was one that spoke that I would like to see 2 area committees rather than 3, and that was basically down to, I sit on the Daventry Planning Committee, and we've had so many cancelled meetings, it's unbelievable. But I still, if it was going to be Daventry and South Northampton joined together, then that would be acceptable to me, and leave Northampton it is, because they are totally different areas altogether. I mean, we're used to sitting on planning committees in a rural area where we look at an application in a village that we've never ever been to. But because when you've got across those 2, what have we got, nearly 500 square miles, we're not going to have visited all of those villages. But obviously in the town, it's totally different. So if it was going to be a split like that, I'd vote for it, not knowing really what the split's going to be. I can't. Moving on to the scrutiny committees. I mean, at the moment, we've got 14, 15 and 16 places across those 3 committees, and they seem to be very busy. What about if we had everybody on those scrutiny committees apart from cabinet members? And then we would still keep those numbers basically the same across. Or leave them as 11 and put the opposition in on chairs as on every committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jamie Lane.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak as the chairman of Northampton Planning Committee. I don't know what people's opinion is, but I wouldn't actually say 4 items on an agenda was a busy meeting. In January, we had 2 items. In February, 4 items. One was withdrawn at the last minute and came to our next meeting in March, which had 3 items on. I don't call those busy meetings. Councillor Randall has just said some meetings in Daventry are cancelled. Councillor Stone attends more planning meetings than her backbenchers there. I was going to make eye contact with 2 of them, but they're not here either. So attendance is low at these meetings too. If we went down to fewer committee meetings, hopefully the attendance would be better at those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Valid points raised there. Councillor McCall, did you wish to raise a point there?
Well, I wish to speak. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Members, take note. These proposals reduce your role. The number of committee seats reduce and the member voice is being diminished by these proposals. I'll accept the scrutiny proposals, but I have fears around budget scrutiny that may be impeded. The pensions voting and lap changes are tidying things up. The planning proposals, however, like the planning department, are a mess. We are told that the committees don't have enough business. Is that more to do with the fact that we have a planning department that has gone from bad to terrible, improved now to be poor, with aspirations of mediocrity and struggling actually to get things to committee? What Democracy and Standards had, by way of a report, was inaccurate and with unworkable ideas and proposals changed on the night. As has been said, the PAS report has not been seen, just the odd selective quote presented. The correct way is publish the report, Democracy and Standards decide what, if any, of those recommendations to accept, and then report back to Council. We are saying here, agree to this, Democracy and Standards sort out the detail, and the vast majority of members have no input. We're told this is a trial, yet there is no sunset clause requiring the Council to stick with the present arrangement or resolve again to permanently change, say at the end of the year. We don't know what the new committees will be, an area committee or not. Will they reflect the political makeup of the Council or the areas? It's important to know what the committee will do. We have a real lack of clarity at present with the 200 house 4 hectare issue, and my attempt to make it clear has been blocked by the monitoring officer without adequate explanation. Welcome to the club, Danielle. We are now told that the reason for these changes are concerns about member behaviour on committee. Without training, the same people will behave in the same way on the new committees. We will not solve training and personnel issues by changing structures. All these issues need to be agreed and need to be resolved before we should agree to the planning part of this proposal tonight. And as others have said, it's rather difficult as we haven't separated them.
Sorry, Councillor Lowry, did you want to say something? Did you have your hand up? Councillor Lowry, yes. No, thank you much indeed. Okay, any further members who'd like to speak at all on the item? Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead. Ken.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to this particular debate, and also I've listened quite intently from all sides of the House. I am concerned to a certain extent with regards to making decisions on some information that I don't have. Also, I do note that it is actually a trial. What happens with the trial if it's not successful? And also, how long is this trial going to go on? And also, if it's not successful, does it come back to this particular committee or this council to propose another solution?
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Alan Chartler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about the involvement of members of the public in the planning process. Currently, or up to last week, people from my area, which is the Braunston and Crick ward, which stretches nearly into Leicestershire and Warwickshire, have been able to attend planning committee meetings. obviously, if planning decisions are made on their behalf in Northampton, they would find it very difficult to get there. There's no rural transport, no public transport, and we've already heard a comment tonight how far it is from Northampton to Crick. It's even further from Lilbourne to Northampton, and Stanford-on-Avon, I don't think you can get to Northampton from there. So what I'd like to know is the mention of the technological breakthrough of webcasting these meetings, which could happen from Towcester, but not yet from Northampton. What is the timescale for making it possible to happen from Northampton, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor Chandler. Any further members of the Council who'd like to speak on this item? Councillor Semiotis.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a point on one of the comments that the chairman of Northampton Planning has made regarding 4 items on an agenda is not a busy meeting. I've been in planning meetings where we've discussed one item for 1.5 to 2 hours. If every item is at least an hour long, which it can be, that's a 4-hour meeting. So I think you need to rethink that process. It's you know, different things, different areas. Yeah, some of them you can get through in half an hour, but some of them are an hour, and we are thorough at Towcester.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Lane, did you want to come back on that point? I appreciate, Councillor Patel, you'll be summing up. But
If I may, but that must be a very well-attended meeting. When you've got absentees, half the committee, then it's a quicker meeting.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, Councillor Semiotis and then Councillor Roberts. But if you can be brief, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on that. It's not just about members speaking. We have members of the public that speak as well, and sometimes several members of the public. So it's not just committee members that speak at our meetings.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts, you have already spoken. Is it something new?
I have, but so had Councillor Lane and
Yes.
so had
Is
Councillor...
it a new item?
Yeah, it's not a new item. It's pertinent to this item, Chair. I'd just like to say to Councillor Lane, I think it would be really good if you heed a reason why somebody's not at a meeting before you make a comment. The 2 members I believe you're referencing, one has a very ill child and the other's just lost her mother.
Okay.
So please take care.
Okay. I think we'll hold it at that point, but thank you very much indeed for that observation. Councillor Warren, I think you wanted to raise something, possibly? No. Okay. Any more councillors who'd like to speak? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. As far as I can see, on a general move, we're one council and we are trying to integrate and to streamline ourselves. And bearing in mind that the number of councillors is going to be reduced after the next election, you're going to find it extremely difficult to man all these committees. Now, I've always thought, perhaps I'm being arrogant, that with one council, West Northamptonshire, as far as the planning committee is concerned, there should be one planning committee. After all, we have one strategic planning committee. It doesn't matter whether you live in Towcester or you live in Kingsthorpe or you live in Daventry. If you're on that committee, you're making decisions about land and property throughout the whole of the district. So I think the proposal now before us to move towards 2 planning committees is a good start and a good step in the right direction. And I fully support that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor James. Well, we've given this item quite a lot of airing, without a doubt, and we still have some more items on the agenda to go. So I'd like to ask Councillor Patel to sum up, please. You have 2 minutes, to be totally frank. Well, sorry, Councillor Grant, you did reserve your right to speak, so yes, you can absolutely come in, and then it'll be over to Councillor Patel.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I think one of the beauties of our council has been the living document that we've got, which is the Constitution, and it is something that we have repeatedly keep coming back to at regular meetings. And I don't think anybody can say that we haven't been good at actually adapting, and when we've made perhaps some errors or maybe some better changes, we've come back and done that. And I think tonight we've heard from Councillor Bignell the reasons why he's supporting the proposal for the 2 planning committees, and also the reasons why that we become one council. I think also it enables through the trial to see how this works. And I think that's a positive. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it's going to come back and we're going to have to make further changes. So I think we should be prepared to adapt to enable it. I think in terms of the new proposed scrutiny committees, considering that adults and children's services are our two biggest areas, to actually have dedicated scrutiny committees, but also with the proposals that are in there for the cross-party pre-meetings and the new triangulation group to actually work on it. I think if there's goodwill from people to do this, I think actually we will get far more from it. We need to be far more responsive. I agree with Councillor McCord, maybe on the budget that needs to have some additional things. There's nothing's cast in stone that can't be changed or modified. And I think this, as a council, we will take us forward onto the next level. And it's something which hopefully members will support tonight. And obviously, as we find any issues, we will obviously rectify them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Okay, Councillor Patel, if you could sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I first of all thank all the speakers and their comments and really appreciate this. I mean, all we are asking the framework of this planning committee, which the email was circulated beforehand. But, I mean, I think Kath already said that the Democracy and Standards Committee, that we will review this in October after the trial period. Now we have set up a special meeting 19th of April for Democracy and Standards Committee, where we're going to have the full report. Past report will be published, I think, end of March, and where the split is going to be, what's going to be. So all members are welcome to come and speak on the 19th of April. I don't think I've got anything else, but move the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 10, we're going to take a vote then, please. Colleagues, if Mr. Hanson, you can run the vote. Okay, if you'd like to vote in favour, against or abstain, please use your voting pads now. If you're having difficulties, please raise your hand. Okay, so the results of the item 10 vote are 43 in favour, 19 against and 5 abstentions. So that is now carried. Thank you. Okay, item 11, Private Finance Initiative, Lifecycle Works and recommendation from Cabinet. I'd like to invite Councillor Kevin Parker to introduce the report and move the proposal. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This is a straightforward paper, and the reason for recommendations are listed, which are the assets to be replaced do not comply with the School Premises Regulations 2012, and their condition poses a health and safety risk to students, visitors and staff to the premises. The alternative for not approving this budget is it would leave the Council exposed to significant financial liabilities, including the costs of potential litigation or health and safety executive action and any penalties imposed by the courts. Therefore, I would recommend under section 3 to agree the recommendation from the Cabinet that it approves the capital budget of 1.1 million to undertake essential assets replacement works to the Northampton PFI schools. Notes that the Cabinet has authorised the procurement of these works. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey, you had a point you're trying to raise there?
It's on the screen, comes to you instead of the
Yes,
speaker.
the microphone's always on here, but thank you very much for the observation. Very good of you indeed. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Parker. Councillor Jonathan Nunn, Leader of the Council. I think you'd like to second the proposal?
Yeah, very happy to second this, Mr. Chairman. This is something that was obviously done previously as a saving. We owe the schools to put it right, so I think we need to get on and do that. Thank you. Very happy to support.
Thank you very much indeed. I have 2 members of the Council who've indicated they'd like to speak. 4. Okay, Councillor Harris, please. First.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nunn just made the point I was going to make precisely, which I think, of course, this work needs to be done, and we will be supporting these recommendations. But I think what it does demonstrate is the historic dire straits that the previous council was in, to be finding schemes like this to take money out. And I think we just need to be cautious of that obviously sometimes things look good on paper at the time, and money was needed to be saved at the time, but actually perhaps they don't always work out for the best in the long term. So perhaps a lesson for all of us not to be focusing on the short term and keep the eye on the horizon for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sue Sharps. No, thank you. Okay, Councillor Stone.
I was amazed when I read this report because I've asked before for a condition survey of our schools and it made really difficult reading. So our schools are not safe, are they, for our children? So this is quite an urgent matter. But over and beyond that, the political expediency it shows, short-term gain for a long-term pain, I think is absolutely appalling. And I hope we don't ever see that again, putting our children and our schools at risk like that. So, of course, I'm going to support it, but I would like to know that when the schools are returned, the school's maintenance is returned to PFI, what the additional cost of that contract is going to be. And I would also like to have that school condition report made available for all the members.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roberts, do you have a question there?
Thank you, Chair. I asked Cabinet for us a clear understanding, when this item came before Cabinet, I asked for a clear understanding of whether we knew what was happening with our school buildings and what the state of our school buildings were. I didn't get an answer at Cabinet, and so I'd like a further answer. The DfE reported a crisis with its school buildings in December when it said there was a risk of collapse of one or more blocks in some schools which are at or approaching the end of their designed life expectancy and structural integrity is impaired. The DfE have refused to produce the list of schools. Would ask that this council produces its list really quickly and we understand exactly what our school buildings look like, because unfortunately relying on schools to do their own surveys, relying on the reports that are provided, they're often insufficient. They don't deal with asbestos management, and we have a huge number of health and safety risks in schools at the moment with relating to asbestos. So wholeheartedly support putting this money back in, but I think we should do a further piece of work understanding the state of our school buildings and the safety position in West Northamptonshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further speakers at all? Any further questions? No. Okay, in that case, I'd like to ask Councillor Parker, would you like to sum up at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really just like to thank everybody for supporting it. I take on board what's happened in, I think it was 2018. We don't need to go there again, and we do need to make sure the schools are up to a standard, and therefore I would like to propose that we go with these proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There were a couple of questions that were asked there that in more detailed fashion that I think have been asked at Cabinet, and therefore perhaps those that can be emailed. I know Councillor Longley's not here this evening, but that would be quite useful for the answer to come through.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Okay, in that case, I'd like to ask for a vote on this paper. So if you'd like to use your pads, please, yes, no, or abstention. If you have any difficulty at all, please do raise your hands. Councillor Lane, are you having a problem voting? Sorry. Not working, thank you. Mr. Hanson, would you be so kind? Thank you. Okay, thank you. It's a unanimous vote, which is rather pleasing. So 69 in favour, no abstentions and no votes against. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 12, motions. Motion 1 proposed by Councillor Rosie Humphreys, Read Children in Care. Councillor Rosie Humphreys, you have 5 minutes to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. The report to Cabinet earlier this month on the scrutiny review of child and adolescent mental health and risk of self-harm was a sobering read. The stark finding that children and young people in crisis are having to wait up to 18 months for an appointment and 2 years for treatment is completely unacceptable. Is it therefore surprising that the rate of hospital admissions as a result of self-harm among 10 to 24-year-olds in 2020-2021 for Northamptonshire was statistically worse than both the East Midlands and England rates in the same time period? The recommendations from this report cannot be implemented soon enough, yet none of the 1.5 pages of recommendations made specific reference to the hundreds of children in West Northants who are currently living with foster carers in children's homes or other residential settings, who are 4 times more likely than their peers to experience mental health issues, as quoted in this report. The 689 children in our care at the end of last month are not only 4 times more likely to experience mental health issues, they will also face the multiple disadvantages of having suffered both neglect and abuse that has placed them in care. The vast majority of children are in care for these reasons, and having lived through the COVID pandemic, unless, of course, they were born after the lockdowns were ended. I expect that the majority of us here have had positive experiences during childhood and were able to form secure attachments, enabling us to form healthy relationships and function well in adulthood. It is sometimes difficult to imagine how it must feel as a child not to have had these benefits and to have been born into a dysfunctioning or abusive world. But the circumstances that lead to some or lead some or all of their childhood in local authority care can be horrific, from, say, the baby of a mother with a heroin addiction who begins its first few weeks on a neonatal ward in the agony of drug withdrawal symptoms, to the traumatized child taken into care after hospital x-rays identify multiple fractures, the victim of parental physical abuse. As we know, the cruelty some of these defenseless children are subject to defies description. Children and young people in care, already severely disadvantaged, have also had to live through the pandemic. I believe that it will be many years before the true effect on this age demographic will be fully assessed. There was a 77% rise in the number of under-18s in England referred for specialist mental health treatment, such as self-harm and suicidal thoughts between April and October 2021. We are now aware of our own sorry record on the numbers of children and young people self-harming in our area. Secondary school pupils' mental and emotional health is proving the biggest challenge in helping them catch up with learning lost during multiple lockdowns. While all children in the Children's Trust care would benefit from such support, from therapeutic support, and this would be a good investment. Young brains in particular have the potential to change and grow, and offering children positive brain-building experiences will enable resilience and nurture well-being. We owe this extra support to the children currently in our care. This council is now on the back foot, to put it politely, on its record 2 years into its unitary existence as regards the welfare of our most vulnerable children. I've already alluded to the issue of legal expenses and the refusals of educational health plans, which Councillor Baker will be giving us an explanation about. And we also have the inadequate rating for the Children's Trust as regards fostering services. It's as well to remember that the troubles of our disgraced county council began with an inadequate Ofsted report 10 years ago this year. History must not be allowed to repeat itself. As corporate parents, councillors and council staff have a statutory duty to promote the physical and mental health of the children and young people in our care, given that they are 4 times more likely than their peers who are not in the care system to experience mental health issues. This council should be doing all in its power to counteract the effect of the negative life events that have brought them into care. They all need timely specialist therapeutic support, and this could be achieved by reintroducing the support that was available in our children's homes until 2016 and make it available to those in foster care also. Government guidance on applying corporate parenting principles asks the question, how can we deliver services in a way that recognises the unique circumstances of looked after children and care leavers? One means of doing this is to identify the therapeutic needs of the children in our care by appointing a task and finish group, subject to Cabinet approval. I propose this motion is moved.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sally Bearsworth, you have 2 minutes. Second proposal.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have an awful lot to add. My colleague has said a very good story, but I will tell you all now. You are all corporate parents here tonight. You have a statutory duty to the children in our care. And if you look after your own children, we have to do the same for the children in care. I was on an adoption panel for many years, and the horrendous stories I heard of children that have come into care through neglect, from sexual exploitation, from various other things that are too awful to mention. But we must do what we can for those children, and therapeutic care should never have been taken away. Never should have been taken away from these children, because we can actually teach the children to recover from what these experiences have been and actually make them a well-adjusted person by the time they grow up. We have to do this. It's our moral and our duty to do this, to make sure that the children have the right care that they do. I'm sure you all agree with me that if your children was in that situation, you would do everything in their power to do the best you could for them. So I beg to move this motion, and I hope you agree to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few speakers already pre-notified. So, Councillor Fiona Cole, would you like to speak first?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think that it's, going to be no surprise that I very much welcome this motion. As a foster carer with NCT myself for the last 10 years, I've lived through a lot of the hell that has gone on, both myself as a carer, but also with the young children and the young people that I've looked after. What I would say is that, there's no doubt provision to support and promote mental health and well-being of all young people. But what I would say is it's not just, to me, those that are in care, but it's also those that aren't in care. And I don't think we should overlook that as well, because there is without doubt that there are elements of prioritising young people in care, but that should also not be to the detriment of those that aren't. But, we all know this is critical for so many reasons. And I don't disagree, as you outline in the motion, and it's also well evidenced nationally and globally that young people in our region, but far wider, are experiencing an epidemic of mental health challenges, and the early intervention, without doubt, is a wise investment. And we have seen a lot of that early intervention investment been removed over the years. Not just about this council, I'm talking nationally, so we can't hold that, at a local level. There are two elements, however, that I would just like to probe on. Now, one of them you've actually answered, and it was with regard to, and apologies, I've not actually had the opportunity to read the report in full myself, but you talked about the evidence of being 4 times more likely, it's stated in the report, for young people in care to suffer with mental health. I just wondered if you could please, or anybody could enlighten us as the actual source or the research that was done in order to actually come to that conclusion. And also, you talked about reintroducing therapeutic support that was available in our children's home in 2016. Could you just also advise what types of specific therapeutic support you're referring to, and also any evidence of the previous effectiveness of those? Because this would obviously help improve, that you believe would help improve our children's social care system. So please don't think I'm against this. I'm not. I'm wholly for it. But I do think that any statements that are made in motions or anything else should be evidenced.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole. Councillor Rosie Humphreys. Right. Did you want to confirm the source of the information?
The source of that being 4 times more likely is a local government association report, which is quoted in the cabinet report I've referred to on mental health services. So it's a local government association. As regards what exactly was provided in 2016, I don't have that information. My colleague, Councillor Sally Beardsworth, who's councillor at the time, might be able to, but I would have thought if, as we hope you will support this motion, the task and finish group we're suggesting is set up will look into those details, but I'm pleased to hear that you are agreeable to the principle.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Sue Sharps.
I'm very pleased to hear that you're in favour of this. I did giggle a moment ago. I think you maybe heard me giggle. I just thought it was slightly ironic that you were asking, not you personally, but being asked for details when we just sat through the democratic standards and we didn't get the report on that. So I did think that was slightly funny. I also think it's very funny because often we hear our councillors being asked to email people if they want a little bit more information. So I'm just throwing that out there just for comedic or possible, throwing it back over to the other side. This is a very good motion. I fully support it. I think the more we can support young people in our area, the better. And it needs nothing else than that. I can see that's all it needs. So fully support.
Thank you. Leader of the Council, Councillor Jonathan Nunn.
Yeah, only very briefly. Thank you, Chairman. We probably just got there, haven't we? A discussion at our group meeting. We were keen to support this. The evidence thing further has been discussed. I think we need to identify exactly where and the extent of it, but on that basis, that's what we'll take to the Cabinet, perhaps asking officers to underpin, to identify where and so on. This may play, I suppose, to the LAP agenda, I'm not sure. But we intend to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, a really important motion. I think that one of the things we often don't consider is that people really need advocates, and our young people really need advocates. And as somebody else mentioned, when young people experience mental health challenges and they've got parents who are really active and really engaged and really fight for their support for their children, then they tend to get better results. And what often happens with people in care is that they are losing those advocates and that they get lost within the system. So it's really important that we look at it. One thing I'd say with the Task and Finish group is it's really important that those with lived experience are engaged with this, and it's that phrase about nothing about us without us. So it's really vital that what we do within the council is get better at listening to the people directly impacted, and that we're actually going to engage with young people who've lived experience of being in care and adults who've got that experience, so that we're not doing for other people, and so that we're really actively seeking the views of those affected, and that will really help with our equality and diversity where we may not be succeeding in that historically.
Thank you very much. Any further colleagues who'd like to ask a question or make a comment? No? Okay. In that case, Councillor Humphreys, would you like to sum up?
Thank you. Well, I'm obviously very grateful for all the support expressed on this important issue, and very pleased we brought it to full council, and I think it'll be a sign of some good news for our most vulnerable children when this week there has been some rather, some very worrying news. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so now I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favour of item 12, motion 1, with children in care, please use your pads. If you're having difficulties in voting, please do let me know by raising your hand. Okay, Mr. Hanson. Thank you. So the motion is carried at 67, unanimous voting, no abstentions and nothing against. Thank you very much indeed, councillors. Okay, item 13, urgent business. Nothing has been notified. A couple of things. We have the community fair coming up on the 31st here in the Great Hall. Please do join us in aid of the charities. And I would very much appreciate you supporting the air ambulance, which is Councillor Wendy Randall's made a fantastic contribution this evening, starting it all off. It's very kind of you indeed. And Northampton Search and Rescue. You're very generous, but £5 per charity. Very good of you indeed. May you all follow that prime example. And I'd like to also ask you very carefully in your communities to stay as safe as possible. And please remember that the quiet ones in our communities are those that probably need the most support. The North Hampshire Community Foundation, if I may just ask for your attention, please. We haven't finished the meeting. If you'd like to take your seats just a moment. The North Hampshire Community Foundation has a very worthwhile supporting mechanism to put people in contact with other people. If you have in your wards those people who are, one, unable to reach food banks or food for their families, please do raise the attention with them. They are very supportive and have some huge patrons who are very generously indeed. So please do raise that with the North Hampshire Community Foundation. There are plenty of other support mechanisms through the cost of living crisis. Using our website, please do refer people to those pages also. A safe journey home, team. It is very wet out there, so please take care. Thank you for coming this evening.
Chairman.